right, good evening. Welcome to the January 27th, 2021 North Andover Conservation Commission meeting. Just a quick announcement on the meeting format for tonight. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, MGL Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the North Andover Conservation Commission will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and or parties with a right and or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the town's website at www.northandoverma.gov. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to listen to the meeting may do so on their televisions by tuning to Comcast Channel 8 or Verizon Channel 26 or online at www.northandovercam.org. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so despite best efforts, we will post on the North Andover Town of North Andover website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. If the public would like to participate in public hearings, please email your question or comment prior to or during the meeting to Amy Maxner at amaxner@northandoverma.gov. The question or comment will be read during the proceedings and responded to accordingly. So I'll hand it over to the chair for a roll call for members present.
Thank you, Amy. We'll do the same format. We'll have Jack Maidman first.
Here.
Followed by Joe Lynch.
Here.
Followed by Al Manzi.
Here.
Followed by myself, Louis Napoli. Followed by Sean McDonough.
Present.
And followed by Tony Capichetti.
Present.
Okay. So the first order of business, approval of minutes for January 13th.
Yeah, I've reviewed these minutes, and I recommend that, or I move that they be approved as drafted.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that's unanimous. The first order of business is small project NACC number 270, 385 Ray Street.
Okay, so this small project permit application is requesting approval under category H, which is fences. This lot was part of the new Ray Street subdivision. This house is constructed and the new homeowner has taken occupancy. The application entails the installation of an aluminum picket fence that will run along the rear property lines. A section of the fence will be within a 100-foot buffer zone to BDW, well outside the 50-foot no-build zone, and no closer than 75 feet. The fence will be installed within existing lawn. The fence is in anticipation of a proposed pool that will be installed outside the buffer zone. I have requested that the as-built plan be used to show the pool patio and associated structures to ensure that all aspects of the pool are indeed out of jurisdiction. So for the fence, I would recommend that you approve it under category H with the condition requiring post-construction inspection by the Conservation Department.
Thank you, Amy.
Yep.
Any questions, Jack?
No, none on this one. It looks like a classic H to me.
Okay. Joe?
No questions.
Al?
No questions.
Sean?
No questions.
Tony?
No questions, but I do have to recuse myself. I did the Ray Street subdivision with Charlie Carroll back in the day for Christensen and Sergi.
Okay. You got that, Amy?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. Just seeing there's no questions, I'll accept the motion.
I move that we accept the proposal under category H of the small project bylaw.
Second. Second.
With
All those in
conditions?
favor, what's that?
With my conditions?
I
Oh,
was
no,
gonna do
no,
that
I'm
next.
sorry, never mind. Sorry. Never mind. Go ahead.
Yeah. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous, and one recusal.
And I move that we approve this with the condition requiring a post-construction inspection by the Conservation Department.
Second.
All those in favor say aye,
Aye.
Aye.
and one, and opposed? Nobody, so, and one recusal, Amy.
Okay,
All right, thank you.
thanks.
Next one is a COC for 242590, a partial COC
Okay.
request, 150 flagship.
Alrighty. So this order of conditions was issued in July of 1992, and it governed the extension of Willow Street and Flagship Drive roadways, associated utilities, wetland crossing, and replication. This roadway extension created frontage for additional lots in this industrial area, and 150 Flagship was one of them. The subject order only governed roadway extension work and nothing to do with the lots. In terms of 150 Flagship lot itself, a subsequent order of conditions 242-1690 governed the development of this lot, and a full and complete certificate of compliance was issued in October of 2017. I confirmed with the town engineer that these are town accepted streets, and therefore the closeout of this order is town obligation since it runs with the land. And 150 Flagship is currently in the middle of a real estate transaction, and the title search showed this outstanding order, and the parties wish to definitively clear the title with a partial certificate of compliance. So I recommend issuing a partial certificate releasing 150 Flagship from this old order.
Okay, thank you. Jack, any questions?
No, I have no questions. Something this old is, and we know it well enough that I view it as fairly administrative in nature. So I have no questions.
Thank you. Joe?
No questions.
Al?
No questions.
Sean?
No questions.
Tony?
No questions.
Motion?
I move that we approve the partial certificate of compliance for 150 Flagship Drive, 242590.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, and that's unanimous. And that's a partial COC, right, Amy?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next order of business is RDA for 400 Great Pond Road.
Alrighty. So this project entails relocation of a 358-foot section of a domestic water line. There is need to shift the location of its entrance into the house because lake water inundates the basement and the water line is submerged for long periods of time during the winter months, making it vulnerable to freezing. The house has hot water radiators as the heating system, thus posing a high risk for losing heat and other complications. So the current location where it enters and runs through the basement is where it gets flooded. Arco Excavation Company will be doing the work and provided a work description. The access will be down the paved driveway and up through lawn area. The trench will be 4 feet deep and 3 feet wide, dug at about 100 feet per day. There will be no stockpiling of materials. There will be daily removal of any excess material that is not used after backfill. Completed backfill areas will be seeded and protected with straw, and they will take advantage of frozen ground conditions. They are really ready to go anytime now. ARCO does not anticipate the need to dewater due to glacial till conditions, and the job is estimated to take about a week to complete. The work will be within the 100-foot buffer zone to the bank of Lake Pechikowick and fringe bordering vegetated wetland, with the house located between the lake and the area of excavation. And erosion controls will be installed along the downhill side of the excavation trench. I would recommend closing the hearing and issuing a negative number 3 determination requiring pre-construction inspection by the Conservation Department of the erosion controls, and then post-construction approval by the Conservation Department for removal of erosion controls. And that's all I have.
All right, thank you. Just a point of memory to the rest of the commissioners. This is the house that's right on the lake. I know you'll be familiar with it because you can see it from 133. But I mean, the house is on the lake.
It is, yeah.
Yeah. So I just want to give them for that. Jack, any questions?
No, I have none for this.
Okay, Joe.
I do have a question with regards to what wasn't stated. So the beginning of this was the necessity to relocate the line due to water inundation. So part of this application speaks nothing of abandoning the existing line and patching this corner of the house where the water comes in, which is the area closest to the lake itself. So what are their intentions with curing the problem of inundation? Simply abandoning the line in place does nothing to cure that.
Well, the location that they're going to relocate it to is an area where it does not experience inundation, and it's going to go through a crawl space that doesn't get wet or flooded.
So they're not worrying about, they're not so much worrying about inundation in the basement itself. No, it does say that inundates the basement and the water line is submerged. So
right. So they're not going to stop the inundation. It's just the height of the water levels. There's nothing they can do about it, but they do have the opportunity to relocate to a section of the basement where there's a crawl space that does not experience.
okay. I just want to make sure we're clear on that distinction, that all they're doing is providing a less vulnerable location for freezing, but the inundation they're not going to cure at all by this RDA,
Exactly.
which would require work right on the lake itself.
Yeah, no, they're not trying to fight that problem. They're just trying to get out of the problem.
Okay, well, just as long as it's on the record that that's what we're allowing, because I have no other questions, because what they're proposing looks reasonable.
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. Thanks.
Al? Thank you,
No questions, actually. I'm familiar with the property, and I have no questions.
Yeah, like I said, Joe, that was a good question, but I know that they're not even going to deal with that side of the house because that house pretty much sits on the lake. So they'd be fighting a losing battle.
It also, that house is also more than 100 years old, and the inundations, preventing inundation is just simply not possible.
Right. And I would be willing to bet it's over 100 years old.
I was just approximating.
Yeah, give or take 100.
Plus or minus 50. Yeah.
Okay, Sean?
No questions.
Tony?
No questions.
Motion?
So I recommended a -3 with the conditions that I listed.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? And that's unanimous. The next one is 242-1787, 135 North Ramp Road. I will have to recuse myself, and I gladly hand it over to Vice Chair, Mr. Mancy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 135 North Ramp Road, DeRosa. This is continued from 1/13/21. Amy, if you could bring us up to speed, please,
Sure.
and we'll go from there.
Okay. So since the last meeting, I had requested clarification on some plan notations, and the commission received updated plans with those clarifications and a memo. And my questions, I'll go through my questions. The first was I asked for a clear notation on the plan as to the extent of the proposed recycled asphalt cap, I guess you call it, on the site. And this has been shown more clearly with a dotted line, and it basically encompasses the top portion of the site that will be graded. And then, you know, there'll be a section of berm on the wetland side. So that's more clear on the plan. There was some discrepancy between, excuse me, between the plan set and the stormwater management narrative about how much loam the side slopes were going to receive. And it's been clarified that it's 4 inches of loam on the side slopes, seeding, and erosion control blanket. The next major question I had related to the wetland line. The plan noted that it was a 2014 Hancock line that was basically resurveyed for this new notice of intent. I walked this wetland line in July, and aside from a couple of flag adjustments, I believe that the line as we see it today is accurate. The commission wanted me to get a handle on this wetland line location through the years. So I did a little more digging and paid closer attention to the historic documents that we accumulated. And there was an airport vegetation management plan in 2006 produced by DeFrains Henry. And the wetland flags for that plan were GPS'd, not surveyed. And then Hancock performed a full delineation in 2014, and this delineation was surveyed. And then Hancock, what they did was they took the 2006 VMP plan and superimposed their new line over that. And there were some variations between the lines, with the most notable difference being the point of the wetland that juts up closest to the toe of slope. And those are current wetland flags A19 through A17. In the historic document list, there was correspondence from Hancock to Mr. DeRosa in August and October of 2013. And it states that, you know, through these wetland delineations that Hancock performed, that they did not find evidence of wetland fill with this glass material, but they did acknowledge that fill in the buffer zone was done, and that the toe of slope of this glass material was very close to the BVW. None of the correspondence, you know, directed DeRosa to address the buffer zone violation, but their letters did acknowledge it.
Okay.
And so that's where I'm at with my updates.
Okay, I'm going to. I'm sure we all have questions, but I'm gonna take it in order, if you don't mind. Jack Maben.
Yeah,
If you
thanks,
have
Al.
any questions, or if you have any questions, or if you want to, however you want to handle it right now.
Yeah, I do have some questions, and I think there are a number of questions that remain outstanding on this project. And I think the one that is closest to you know, that is clearly within our jurisdiction is the issue of whether this water that enters the groundwater stream through the infiltrators will pollute groundwater and buffer zone areas beneath it. That becomes a question for me because this project is about a massive fill in a concentrated area, a very deep fill, and I think they've done a good job of. I'll defer to the engineers, but they've done a good job of running through the calculations, the percolations, and they did test pits, and they seem to have a good design on the water making it down into the soil or the fill, and but I think the question of pollution remains unanswered. And why that's an issue here is because of the massive amount of fill. We don't know the nature of the material, and there's so much of it. We've discussed a little bit about how we could determine and answer these questions, and one was with soil borings, pretty long soil borings that could amass some expense. That could be still on the table. But another method, which is the basis of my question right now, is: are there any water quality monitoring wells in the vicinity of this wetland system at the toe of the filled slope that could give us some idea as to the purity of the water in that area? So I think that really goes to the point of my question. So I think one way or another that has to be answered in order for us to do our jobs here at the Conservation Commission. I do have a comment though, and this is adding to Amy's comments about the amount of fill and the extent of the fill spatially and its proximity to the wetland line. There was a correspondence package that was circulated that seemed to be pretty complete, but it was very consistent, especially in the time of the filling, which is after 2005, before 2008. That the instruction, the approval was that double-stick hay bales and silt fence would be installed outside the 100-foot buffer zone to the wetland, and that would be the limit of work, meaning that there wouldn't be any fill inside of that limit of work. And Amy just noted that Hancock had stipulated that that fill had extended, beyond the 100-foot buffer zone, and by my firsthand observations, I think it got pretty close to the wetland flag that I saw, and I think the surveys also support that observation. So, that has nothing to do with stormwater, and it has nothing to do with the design of the system, but it's an issue that I think is relevant in this discussion. So, Al, that's all I have. I have more questions than answers.
Okay, so your question to go on the record, and I'm going to ask Amy to record the questions so that we can get them all to the applicant at once. Your question is: are there any existing water monitoring wells anywhere on or near the site that we could obtain data from? Is that fair?
That is fair.
Okay, Amy, you got that question?
Or another way to determine if pollution would be possible with the current design of the project.
You want to know what's going on in the groundwater?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Amy, you got that, right?
Got that.
Okay, thank you. Joe Lynch.
I'm not going to try to be repetitive of those points that Jack made, but by sheer circumstance, I might be repetitive in some areas.
Okay.
So I've spent countless hours reviewing the litany of documents that have been available for the history of time here, going back to 1998, and culminating ultimately with this notice of noncompliance issued by DEP back in February of 2014, and then everything that's happened since then as well. What's not clear to me is in what order is this actually being done? And I say that in the sense that it seems like the approach here is to use pulverized asphalt or reclaimed asphalt or RAP, for lack of a better term, recycled asphalt pavement, over substantial areas of the site, which in essence makes it pretty much impermeable. But by doing so, it suggests that somebody somewhere along the lines of this process is concerned about moving water through this material, and they want to not do that over a large area. But the other end of that same question is, if somebody is concerned with doing that, why are they collecting surface runoff from those areas they've quote unquote capped and simply infiltrating it into the ground, just literally on the edge of the 100-foot buffer zone? And I'm trying to be very, very careful to separate or isolate a Wetlands Protection Act and North Andover Conservation Commission bylaw issue from a solid waste issue, because I think the solid waste issue drives what's ultimately happening immediately adjacent to our resource area. And that being said, I don't even know if I don't know at what point has DEP even reviewed this proposal, and have they bought into this as something that they desire? And if they have bought into it, what is their concern about capping this? Why is it being capped? And if it is being capped, why are we then simply infiltrating the water through the same material on the fringe that if water doesn't infiltrate straight down, it infiltrates down and laterally at the same time. And by doing so, it's going to migrate down into our jurisdiction below or within this film media, but ultimately finding its way to the water table and ultimately to the adjacent wetlands. So Jack's question is a legitimate one. And I don't think we, one, have that answer at all. And two, I don't believe I know the DEP has even embraced this approach and why they've embraced this approach. What I do know is the notice of noncompliance was issued in 2014 based on a letter a couple months before that to the owner operator, and it's taken a full 6 years to get it to us. And so I know a lot of stuff has happened, but I don't know what has happened. And I say that all because there seems to be a real conflict in the course of debate, talking about the stuff off and on since last May when the NOI was filed. I've actually even heard conflicting ideas that, some people want, like the airport commission perhaps may want this area on the northeast finger to not be capped with asphalt, but to simply be planted with grass. Now that would eliminate the concentrated infiltration through the media and do it over a more dispersed sense, which pretty much mimics what's going on there now. That makes some sense, unless of course we're concerned about the material in that media. But collecting it and concentrating it makes little sense because we run the risk of inundation. On those times when the grate capacity either gets fouled by runoff material or leaves or whatnot, and can't move the water, then the perimeter burn that's being proposed, could overtop. And I say that with great hesitation because no stormwater review has been done yet, and it needs to be done at some point. But what I believe is we don't have anywhere near enough information, an incomplete application with regards to even sending this out for stormwater review. I think at the very minimum, we need to be advancing borings, maybe only a couple, either end of the infiltration gallery, down through the fill material, down into the original parent material, and at least 5 feet down into where groundwater is determined. By doing that, we can then send out the stormwater review and get a better understanding of what the threat is in our resource area, the buffer zone, and the immediate wetland itself. But I think to also better understand the question of the appropriateness of capping with RAP or not, I think one additional boring should also be done, and that's up in on the plan that I just received as part of this recent submittal. Would be at the top of the slope. If you look at that existing plan, near the notation where it reads 18-inch HDPE, 237 linear feet at slope 0.006. Right adjacent to that notation, there's a spot elevation 98.7. It's the area closest to the nearest wetland flag at the top of the slope. I think a boring needs to be advanced there as well. And based on the results obtained and interpreted from those 3 borings, it may allow us to be satisfied we've got enough information, or it may require some additional information be gathered. But I think it's premature to go off and check aboard the whole place all at once without knowing exactly what we're looking for or where we're looking for it. So I think that's where we're at with regards to the stormwater, and a lot of that stacks right on top of the points that Jack raised. It'll help us better understand all those questions that he raised. But I think the earlier point I had made was the DEP's involvement of this proposed plan. I mean, regulations in our bylaw require that an applicant have all permits applied for and obtained before they apply for, before they file an NOI. So they're under an administrative notice of noncompliance from DEP to do something. They've been doing something for 6 years. What it is, I don't know yet. And I don't know if the plan that's before us is something that DEP will approve. I think we need to know that answer before we go off thinking this is something that they are going to approve. Someone needs to tell us officially, DEP wants them to do this and this is why. We haven't heard that yet.
And you're referring to the result of capping and the creation of stormwater management, a stormwater management system to handle the capping?
Well, I read the BUD, excuse me, I read the BUD as well, but I also read the notice of noncompliance, and, you know, ostensibly they, cease and desist all activities within certain areas were defined, which I believe they probably have done. But they also required to do other things like slope stabilization and control of runoff over the berm and to control stormwater. What I don't see anywhere in there is a direction to cap it and then to capture that water and push it directly into the same material they've just capped. To me, it just doesn't make sense. I can't imagine, it's either one or the other. You don't do both, which is what I think is officially before us in this NOI. And I'm not so certain. I've certainly never seen anything from DEP that suggests that this is something that they want them to do and that's a wise thing to do.
Okay.
Now, again, I say that all in the context that this infiltration system is directly adjacent to our 100-foot buffer zone. By virtue of infiltrating water, knowing it moves not only vertically but horizontally, it stands to reason that that infiltration will end up in jurisdiction by the time it gets down into those lower horizons. So I'm not trying to mince this into a solid waste issue. I'm truly trying to take the solid waste issue and how it impacts the Wetlands Protection Act and our bylaw. And that's why I choose this approach.
Okay.
And I think there's a lot of comments and not so much questions, but I think it points to deficiencies that in this NOI filing that have yet to be satisfied. In, one of the driving things they're asking for here is managing their stormwater. They're being directed by DEP to do that. And we don't have enough information to send it out for third-party review.
I agree.
Okay, I'm all set.
Okay. Sean?
So, I still think that drilling down, getting borings and getting samples of what's in there is the best thing we can do to investigate the situation and then make determinations from there until we know what's there, what's in there and what's underneath it. It's tough really to make any logical and what I would call a good sound decision. And I haven't heard too much about that tonight, but I do think that is still very, very important. You know, I don't know if there are issues concerning the growth of the pile over time. You know, where it started, where it went at different points of time. But that is also another concern I have, if it could be addressed. And if you're going to go ahead and try to seal it off or top it off, and I heard this before, you have to look at the solid waste regulations and whether or not those regulations would allow this to occur under this situation is something that probably needs to be discussed or addressed as well.
Okay, thank you. Tony?
Unfortunately, this is one that I had to recuse myself on earlier, so I'm not eligible.
I apologize for that. Okay, so I'm just gonna. I have a few things. I have the list of documents and descriptions dating back to December of 1998, and the very first thing I have, the very first document I have is a document dated December 18th, 98 that was sent to. I'll read exactly. DeRosa Landfill Management Inc. And it's from Mike Howard of the Conservation Commission, and it's an enforcement order citing violations that are taking place on the site. The next document I have is almost 2 years later, November of 2000, and it's from Hancock Associates to then Brian LaGrasse. And in paragraph 2, one of the things that strikes me is in paragraph 2 it says Mr. DeRosa intends to perform anticipated work 100 feet from the wetland resource areas, avoiding a filing with the Conservation Commission, erosion controls consistent, blah blah blah. That statement of staying greater than 100 feet from identified wetland areas is repeated several times in documentation and correspondence between Hancock Associates, the DeRosas, and the town. And one of the things that I notice now today, as they're before us with a notice of intent requesting the activities that have been described, is that that's not exactly what happened. The activities and the fill are at some points in the property within 5 feet of a wetland flag, let alone outside of the 100-foot no activity zone. So it would appear to me that based on the information I have from the most recent surveys and wetland flags and measurements from the piles of glass, that the site's in violation for, working within the 100-foot, and indeed in some cases bringing the fill right up to almost within 500 feet of a wetland flag, 5 feet of a wetland flag. I'm sorry. So I guess that's one of the problems that I'm having with the whole thing. Not to mention everything else. And I feel, as Joe mentioned, I feel that we don't have enough information based upon what's being asked of us, based upon the most recent drawings that I have received. I got the most recent drawings within the past week, and the locations of the capping, if you will, for lack of a better term, and the locations of the stormwater management systems, and then wanting to loom and seed the slopes, which are arguably one-to-one slopes, and at some point that one-to-one goes down more than 100 feet. That would be a neat trick. I'd like to see that. I suppose it's possible, but I've never seen one that aggressive before. So I don't think we have enough information, and the question of the capping and the solid waste issue also raises that question. So I guess that's where we are with the questions. Does anybody from the applicant want to answer any of those questions? Okay, Amy, are you aware of, are they with us?
Yeah, yep, David Cowell,
Yep, I'm on.
Robert DeRosa.
Okay, okay, no problem. Who is that on? Is that David?
Yeah, Dave Cowell, Hancock Associates. How are you guys?
Okay, Dave, how are you? So, you've heard our questions and some of the comments.
Yep.
What's your response?
Well, I think that we've deliberated on some of these things. I do want to make a point that Mass DEP has reviewed and approved this plan prior to us submitting the notice of intent to the Conservation Commission. In fact, I believe Amy Maxner, I have an email open in front of me. We had this reviewed by Mark Fairbrother, Jill Provincial, John McCulley, and Richard Spieler at Mass DEP. We had conference calls regarding this prior to submittal of our applications. So we are quite confident and definitive that Mass DEP has vetted this and has complete buy-in for what we're proposing. Mass DEP asked us to provide stormwater drainage in accordance with the stormwater management standards and stabilization of the slopes, which is what we have on the table in front of you guys. We continue to go down the rabbit hole in terms of soil investigations or things that are more pertinent to the mass contingency plan. We've said with confidence that this is processed glass aggregate and that it's not contaminant. And you know, in correspondence with my clients and legal representatives, that's something we're apprehensive to offer. It's not. It really is an exorbitant cost to get into phase 2 environmental site assessment, which again is administered by the Mass Contingency Plan and not the Wetlands Protection Act or local bylaw. And it's you know, a very exorbitant expense that we don't necessarily see eye to eye on this, that this is something subject to your purview.
Do we have, you talked about having this reviewed by DEP, and you named some folks that were involved in it. Do we have that correspondence? Is that part of your notice?
Yeah, it's in. I mean, Amy, I'll just forward the email again to Amy Maxner.
We don't.
But there's not. DEP. We talked to them via conference call.
Okay, so
prior to submittal of our application. This is explicitly what they asked. We provided them with this plan, and we talked to them in a conference call with all 5 of these different representatives of Mass DEP in attendance, and they said, yes, that's explicitly what we're looking for to rectify your notice of noncompliance from 2014. And
when was this, David? When did you talk to these guys?
This was May 28th, 2020. We sent the email in May 2020, and the conference call was held just days prior to that.
So you just so you know that information is not part of your notice of intent or the list of documents that I have.
David, did you receive anything in writing from those people at DEP, or was it simply a conversation that you had?
It was a conversation that we had on phone. They asked us to send them a copy of the plan for review and approval prior to our submittal. And they reviewed it and they approved it and said, you know, go ahead with this. And I think their silence on commenting on this during the Mass DEP issuance of a file number is, you know, I mean, we can ask them to speak on this if you guys want. That's no, in fact, that may help us to ask Mass DEP to step in and say, yes, they asked us a few months ago, where do things stand? We're waiting on that order of conditions. And we said, we're still under deliberations and public process. And that was,
David, you don't think that would have been important to include?
What's that?
That information, that very information that you just recited, you don't think that would have been important and salient to the application?
At prior hearings, I've said this time and time again that we've had this conversation. This is, if you look back to any prior hearing, I've discussed this on a number of occasions. Amy's been pretty good at this. She's received the emails.
Well, I've received.
We had correspondence with these guys, right?
Had conversations.
Al, this is Joe.
Somebody's got to mute.
The DEP has the word environment in that acronym. Doesn't necessarily mean that we have the same interest that's at heart. There are often conflicts between DEP solid waste and DEP wetland sections, you know, in their own agency. So in the process of us doing our due diligence, when we have a question that needs to be answered, somebody of authority needs to answer it. I still wrestle with the question. If this material is so good to create surface water down through it, why are we capping it with RAP and making a point infiltration as opposed to a more dispersed infiltration? And why are we trying to control it with pipes? Why are we not just putting a berm and let it run through this beautiful glass material? Why are they so concerned about capping? And it's not
David,
clear.
Okay, Joe, David, that's a good question. Do you want to address that?
That I don't know. We were asked by Mass DEP to install stormwater infrastructure in accordance with the stormwater management standards. And unless you do engineering, you're not going to meet the stormwater management standards. I think their primary concern with this is slope failure and collapse, which is hence the stabilization that they've asked us to provide. And by directing stormwater into stormwater infrastructure, that it diverts stormwater runoff from running down those slopes. It's important to note that even in the condition now that it's been in, is that there's no existing erosion problems on that slope, which I think is a testament to the drainage class of the PGA that's out there.
That's exactly my point. Is someone going to great extremes to quote unquote cap it? Don't even want to use the word cap, to somehow seal off the surface, make it quasi impermeable, collect it into a stormwater system, and then send that same water down into a concentrated infiltrator and elsewhere on the same site. If it is not overtopping now and not causing an erosion control problem on the slope, and I was on a site walk, it's not doing that. I agree with you. If that's the case, and their requirement is to build this perimeter berm in a more deliberate fashion around the perimeter, I see all that water staying up on that plateau and moving through the glass with no sophisticated piping system. I see it being a far more gradual and dispersed infiltration, and therefore more beneficial from a wetlands perspective. So I question the veracity or the validity of why DEP is so interested in embracing bringing RAP in. I just can't understand the question.
Can I speak up? This is Rob DeRosa. I just want to clarify a couple of things. In 2000, when we went to meet with DEP to resolve the notice of noncompliance that was issued to Integrated Paper, not to Positive Start Realty, we basically set up a series of meetings with them. We had at least 3 in-house meetings up at DEP's site in Wilmington, and then the last site visit we had was in November of 2019, and it was with Mike Miller in the airport and Hancock Engineer. Since I've been involved with the site, I've had numerous engineers and numerous wetland people working on this project, which they don't have the complete history of the site. Historically, going back to 2000 to 1998, that order of cease and desist, that was never issued to Integrated Paper. I think it was put in writing, but Integrated Paper never received a cease and desist from Concom. Originally, and for years, that area was held for storage and it had the wrap material on it, and Integrated Paper stored roll-offs. They parked equipment up there, and we were basically going to return that piece of property to the way it was before the upper area got basically the wrap material got destroyed in the whole process, and we're just returning back to the original grade. It had nothing to do with DEP. We probably could have went into DEP and said, look, we're going to loom the whole place. But we just wanted to return the property back to the way it was when Integrated Paper had it. and give it back to the airport. That's how the wrap material came into play.
Well,
And-
what date was that, Rob?
What, the wrap material? That was
You're talking about?
the wrap material. If you take a look at some of the old photographs, you'll see equipment in roll-off parked up on the hill up there, and it was covered. That whole area was covered with riprap. I mean, with the wrap material, and that's what we were bringing it to. And that the engineers. My brother's not an engineer. I'm not an engineer. I'm not a wetland scientist. But all I know is that I looked at a lot of historical data, and everybody pointed out we're 100 feet away from the wetland, and then the wetland line changed sometime with the airport's flyover or GPS or whatever it was different than what the plans. If you take a look at all the plans that my brother has on record for integrated paper, that wetland line hasn't changed. The toe of the slope hasn't changed in all those years. But the wetland line did, and there was some discrepancy, and I don't know how the discrepancy came about. But I know we didn't fill wetlands, but we just wanted to return the piece of property back to the condition that it was prior to maybe 2013, 14, when anybody that was up there would be able to, the trucks would drive up there, they'd park roll-off trucks up there. And you probably saw some of the roll-off trucks that Dynamic has up there right now. But we just wanted to return that back to where it's the condition that it was before it got out of control. And DEP was.
Why wrap it now? Why not just loom it and seed it and be done with it?
I don't know. I'm not an engineer, so I can't say.
It's likely because you have plans that you want to complete after we're done. Am I right?
Say that again.
You have plans for the property. Once you wrap it, if we allow you to wrap it, you have plans for that property, don't you?
Well, I don't have a lease on that property. I'm a tenant at will. So,
you're a tenant at will. So you're a tenant at will. That means you still occupy. You still occupy and use. Unless you tell me you're surrendering your lease and moving on, I'm going to say that you have plans to move.
I'm not. We're not. I just want to get this thing. To tell you the truth, I just like to get this put to bed and do it. We're trying to do the right thing up there. I've been trying to do the right thing up there since 2018 after integrated paper left, and just bring it back to the condition that it was in. And hopefully, it would make a useful piece of property to somebody, like either to Dynamic or it's going to have to go out to bid.
Well, the whole purpose of the notice initially, when we were told, was to just simply you were told us that you had no market for the material. You're not allowed to hold it for speculation. That's a DEP reg. So you didn't know where you were going to go with it. And so the idea was just to loom and seed it. And now the wrap material is coming in, which if you put wrap on there, you're going to cause sheet flow, which is going to necessitate a stormwater management program. And that wrap will be able to support vehicles and or equipment. Am I correct?
No, that wrap material, that was in the original submittal back in 2000. With the first submittal that we gave to Concom back in May. That nothing's changed there. That was always in there.
Okay. All right.
The looping and seeding would just pertain to the slope.
Okay. Go ahead. Amy, go ahead.
Clarifying point that, when I said that the 2006 wetland line and the 2014 wetland line differed, they don't differ by 100 feet. Wetlands don't change by 100 feet. So it was just, I don't know, someone needs to mute. We're getting really bad feedback.
So
Amy, this is Mike Miller. I just joined the phone call. I'll mute my phone, but I would like to speak.
Okay, so let me just finish my point that the wetland didn't change by leaps and bounds. Okay, there's, some flag adjustments or difference by, maybe, I don't know, 10 feet or whatever, but it's not 100 feet. So the wetland, so your advance into the buffer zone wasn't a function of the wetland moving. It was the function of you importing material close to the wetland in the buffer. So that's all I wanted to.
And Amy, how close is that material to the closest wetland flag now, as of today?
10 feet or so, I would say.
How many? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
10 feet or so.
10 feet. And the original letters that from Hancock dating back to 2000 stated that they would be staying out of the 100 foot. Is that correct?
Yes.
Hey, can we get a response to that?
I think it's important to note that it's not like an isolated letter. There is a very, very clear written documentation that they were going to do all work outside the 100 foot.
Yep.
Many times during which there was clear evidence on site they were working well within the 100 foot. So the documentation speaks for itself. It's crystal clear.
Yep.
If didn't know that they were within the 100 foot, they ought to have known they were within the 100 foot. And for whatever reason, we've only been grabbing this issue by the horns through this NOI process in an official capacity. There are folks involved in this application who for years have known they've been working within the 100 foot, and all the while telling official folks that they were not.
Yeah.
And DEP and the Notice of Noncompliance states that in so many words as a direct violation. It's what is spelled out in the Notice of Noncompliance. So there's no denying that, and I don't even want to kind of waste any more time on that. It's crystal clear what that situation is, and
Agreed.
in what it is with that material staying there would be only because of the extreme egregiousness of the amount of material that's out there would we not simply order it removed. My position is I see no benefit in removing it, but I also don't want its presence being there, one, forgiven, and two, be something that we have with from an environmental perspective from wetlands for years to come. That is what this NOI is all about. DEP wants them to satisfy the commission because of the impacts that are probable or potential, and they have got to do the things that we've asked as far as determining the suitability of this material to accept surface water through an infiltrated media. And if that's the case, why are we doing it in a concentrated way within the recharge pond as a recharge gallery, as opposed to doing it in a more dispersed fashion across the entire site? Those are questions that are well within our purview and have yet to be answered.
Okay. Thank you. I'd like to recognize Mr. Miller, if I may. But who wants to speak? Was that Sean?
It is. Yes, I would like to hear a response to Amy's suggestion that it was supposed to be out the 100 and now it's within 5. Either an acknowledgement that that is the case, or explaining why we're wrong on that.
Okay, David.
Oh, that's now again, I don't. Whereas Rob said that he's been along for this ride for 30 years. I've only been privy to this project for the last year. So I don't know, aside from the piecemeal documents that you guys have in communication record with them, I don't have any. I'm no more knowledgeable than you are.
David, what we have is documents dating back to the year 2000 from Hancock Associates to the commission.
Yes.
So that's what we're relying upon, are those documents, and then we're relying upon the existing conditions today. That was what that's the basis of Sean's question. Amy has made observations that the wetland didn't move 100 feet, the pile of glass did, and Sean just wanted to know if you had any response to that or not. You don't have to have a response. He just was looking to see if you had one.
Oh, sorry,
Or
no.
or if David acknowledges it.
Or if you acknowledge. Rob's acknowledgement was that the wetland moved. We
No, I
categorically.
didn't say the wetland moved. The line, basically, the toe of the slopes, if you take a look at all these stamped engineering plans from 2000, 2006, the toe of the slope hasn't changed at all. There is a letter on file that there's some discrepancy. There was a conversation between the airport and Hancock when the notice of noncompliance came in, and there was some type of difference between the airport's engineering wetland line and where the actual wet toe of the slope is now.
No, you're half right. The discrepancy was between two different wetland lines.
And my brother Chuck is one of the most honorable guys I know, and he's not an engineer. He's not a wetland scientist. He has a stack of stamp plans, hired engineer firms to come in to show him where to operate and how to operate, put the stakes in, put the bales in, put the limits of work in, and you can take a look at all the stamp plans that they've had, and that line hasn't changed at all.
We're talking about a wetland line, and we're talking
No,
about.
Go ahead. Sorry,
What we were talking about was the discrepancy between the wetland line on the airport vegetation management plan and the wetland line on the subject property. Amy talked about the discrepancy there, and I talked about the discrepancy in the documentation where you guys, the applicants, the runners, the operators of the project, have consistently, through your engineer, stated you would be outside of the 100. And now here we are today, and that pile of glass is within 10 feet of the wetland flag, substantially into the 100. That's the discrepancy. There's no arguing it. Those are the conditions on site. Nobody can make that up. It's right there. So that's what that is. Sean or Joe, who was trying to speak?
It was Joe, but Al, yeah, I think you just encapsulated exactly what I was about to say. We're not arguing about, 98 feet, 95 feet versus 100 because I missed by 5 feet. No, you missed by 95 feet.
Right.
There were plenty of people, the operator who relies on their engineers and experts. Well, I'm seeing one firm's name through the entire history here who was cited multiple different times, but never brought it to the attention of the commission that, boy, there's a problem out here. Apparently never brought it to the attention of the property owner, but nonetheless was on the site enough to know there was a big problem out there. And in the process of making this presentation beginning back in May and early on in this process, attempted to throw members of the commission's staff under the bus by saying we were told we were okay. But everything I ever read through this whole history of documentation is so long as you're more than 100 feet away was the only way you're okay.
And in fact, you're 100% right. Those letters from the experts were assuring the administrator at the time that we would stay outside the 100-foot. It was like a promise.
That's almost a parallel issue to the bigger question of the permit here, of the NOI here. But nonetheless, through this process, it's got to be resolved. And I think we could argue that point tonight and accomplish nothing. But I think moving forward to get the information we're looking for is important. Mike, before I jumped in and you did it, Al, Mike Miller, I know, was looking to find the floor to address something.
Yes, I'd like to give Mr. Miller the opportunity to be heard if he's still there.
I am, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the opportunity, and through you to your commissioners. Although a lot of questions were raised today, one I do want to put to rest. That property in question out there will not be put out to bid. I desired, when I met with Mr. DeRosa and his team, I wanted a solution to the problem that was satisfactory to both the DEP and the North Andover Conservation Commission. I hear loud and clearly that, and I agree, the land should be stabilized, corrected to your as well as the DEP's liking, but it will not be going out to bid for any use other than being just natural resource area and just sitting there idle. So to address the concern that there'll be additional use of it or some type of a staging area or something of that nature, I heard, and I think Joe, you may recall, Commissioner Lynch, when we were on the site walk, I told you that it wasn't going to be anything out there on that peninsula. So I just want to set the commission's mind at ease that that land would remain as undeveloped land.
Mr. Miller, thank you. We appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Mr. Miller, just stay on for 1 minute, just in case any of the commissioners or Amy just have a question of you, okay? Does anybody want to ask any questions of Mr. Miller? I'll start with Jack.
Mike, this is Jack Maben. I asked the question at the very top of the discussion about monitoring wells, water quality monitoring wells in the vicinity of the limit of work here. Are you aware, or do you know of anyone at the airport that might be aware of any water quality monitoring wells? And the reason I am grabbing onto this and holding on is because one of the core values of the Wetland Protection Act is pollution prevention. And with the large amount of fill, unknown fill in the area that we're proposing to percolate water through, I think that opens up the potential to some bad pollution. And I think it's within I know it's within the Conservation Commission's jurisdiction to address that issue and satisfy ourselves and the project operators, satisfy them as well as to there will be no pollution on this site. So that's my question to you. Are you or any of the airport people aware of any water quality monitoring wells?
I am not, but I can speak with our environmental scientist, Randall Christensen, to see if he's aware of anything that may be in that area. I did bring this matter up to him, and he is familiar with DEP standards and what would be required prospectively going in the future for monitoring wells. So obviously that would be on the airport to provide those, and we understand that, as well as the testing once a final resolution of this matter comes to be. But I'm not sure of anything in existence at this time. But I'll reach out to Randy, and I will get back to your administrator if I find out any answers.
Thank you, Mike.
Okay, Mike, stay with us.
This is Joe again. If I could direct a question, Michael.
Yes, Joe, please.
On the line with us. I guess does the Airport Commission have any position as to ownership of that material or concern for ownership of that material when it remains on site, or is it simply that as long as we're satisfied and there's a permit to allow it and that someone manages that stormwater system in the future, your commission is satisfied? You know,
they're satisfied. They're satisfied that the latter, not the former. They're more satisfied that it's met with your as well as DEP's approval, as long as a permit to maintain it, and they're happy at that point.
So let me ask a hypothetical. And it's probably unfair, but I will ask a hypothetical question. So this permit that we may issue under an order of conditions will allow them to stabilize, control runoff, and the other things to satisfy and relieve them from the notice of noncompliance. That's what the goal here is. In doing so, we're not granting any other permission for any other activity out there. So some people would suggest that you've got the ability, someone's got the ability to own and potentially mine out that material in the future, which, as we've debated with where the wetland line is clearly going to require a permit in the future. Do you know of any such plan or any such consideration to do that in the future?
No, I do not. None whatsoever. I would love to see that just lush green grass or vegetation, obviously not such that would penetrate into the airspace, but the low-growing shrubbery. I just want to see that being reclaimed by Mother Nature. I'm not aware of anyone that has goals or objectives to remove that material from there.
Very good. Thank you, Michael.
All right, thank you, sir. Let me, Mr. Miller, let me just go down the line real quick so everybody gets a fair chance to ask. Sean?
I don't have any other questions at this point other than what I've already articulated.
Okay, thank you. All right, so Mr. Miller, if you'll just please stay in close contact with Amy Maxner, and we'll let you know. We'll keep you in the loop as to what's going on here. And
I will do that,
appreciate
Mr. Chairman.
appreciate your time here.
Thank you for the opportunity.
All right, thanks. All right,
Take care.
thank you. Amy?
Yep.
So a substantial number of questions have been raised but one of which I haven't heard yet is on the basis of the plan before us, which calls for a stormwater management system, for lack of a better term. My understanding is that should go out for stormwater review by our third-party peer review. Am I correct?
Yes.
All right.
That
So,
was my recommendation.
okay. Well, that's a valid and a standard recommendation. That's why we have that engineering firm on retainer with the planning board for exactly these
Mhm.
types of situations. So, I feel my humble opinion is that the plan before us, as designed, should be sent before the engineering firm for a stormwater management review, while we continue to try to figure out what exactly is underneath the pile of glass, and that's something that we'll have to just keep working on. If anybody else has any other questions that you want Amy to record as part of the record for our deliberation going forward, please make sure she has them. And that way she can also make sure that the applicant's representative has those, and everybody's on the same page.
Yeah.
So Al, let me speak to the point you just made about potentially commissioning a third-party review for stormwater. It's almost a cart before the horse until we have better, more complete data for stormwater review. I'm not certain we're giving them a full review right out of the gate. So
Okay.
it almost
okay.
makes some sense to do, I suggested 3 borings, 2 within the infiltration gallery area and down through the fill material and down into parent material to 5 feet below groundwater, and do one additional one. And I cited that location. I can, again, if you wish, but one additional one. And once we have that data, then I think the stormwater review can move forward, in the then reviewing of that, determine whether additional borings may or may not be necessary. The 3 may be adequate. But,
Okay. All right.
but to have the stormwater review start without that additional data, I think is a little premature.
All right. You want 3 borings. Okay. Jack?
Yeah, I think Joe speaks to the engineering side of it very well, and I think the order of operation is right on. The borings, I'm totally in favor of that because I think it will go a long way to answer the question of whether we would be intentionally polluting this area by installing this stormwater management system.
Okay.
Yeah, and Al, what was silent in my quick summary there is still some explanation from DEP Solid Waste why it's beneficial to either cap it with wrap or not cap it and let it infiltrate in a more gradual and dispersed fashion. Because I'm still not, again, the stormwater review is going to be predicated upon one or the other. And right now, I'm not certain if solid waste section is looking at it from our stormwater perspective from a Wetland Protection Act.
So should we be sending off a letter or having Amy get in touch with DEP Environmental?
I think I heard David's offer to have DEP chime in on that very question and provide some sort of documentation, or if not documentation, at least testimony before the commission of their willingness to accept this plan and why they're accepting it. And maybe through the course of a dialogue, we might be able to open DEP's eyes to something that they maybe didn't consider.
Well, I like to see both happen. I'd like to see if David's willing to do so, have him reach out to them and have them issue a statement or a document to us or a letter. And at the same time, I'd like to have Amy also parallel make contact with DEP, and I'd like to see where the roads diverge.
That's
excellent. I think we have to do that.
That's pivotal to the question of stormwater review. That we need to understand why one is better than the other, or why one is recommended over the other, to before we embark upon a stormwater review.
Okay, understood. All right, anybody else?
Al,
Yes, sir.
Charlie DeRosa.
Yes, sir.
I just want to get back to you on one question. You raised it December 18th, 1998, subject property owner, operator cease and desist from the.
Well, I have a letter in front of me, Charlie. I'm looking at it right here.
And let me read the answer to that letter. According on August 11th, 1999, with Mrs. Rachel Martin, Conservation Administrator with the North Andover Conservation Commission. Subject property owners and the operator are presently in full compliance with the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act and the North Andover Wetland Bylaws. So that's pretty much null and void by the Conservation Commission, and everything that preceded that was done in a letter correspondence, as my brother probably brought before you a little while ago. And it was also my understanding that total parcel wasn't going to get wrapped, only the front portion, which, and I thought everybody was in agreement with that, but I was a little surprised tonight.
Well, we're not there yet, Charlie. We're just not there yet.
But to get,
We're looking for more information. Honestly, we're just trying to get more information so that we can make an intelligent decision that everybody can live with.
no, I'm in harmony with the direction everybody's trying to go now. But every complaint that came in to us from 1998 to now has been pretty much conveyed back and answered with letters. That's the part I'm more interested in wanting to get straightened out, because it's.
If you wouldn't mind, that letter that you have there from Rachel Martin, if you wouldn't mind getting a copy over to Amy for our file, that would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, tell Chuck they can't hear him.
All right, I'll get. All right, I'll get that. I'll get that to Amy or.
Well, yeah, that way there we can make sure it's part of that document collection that I talked about when the meeting started.
Right now, every line that was put in up there, all those letters correspond to the various plans that we have, and I sometimes even get confused because I paid a lot of money in engineering. But we'll let it go at that, and we'll keep working.
We'll make sure that the record has all the information.
Yeah, but it's almost like for some reason the record and what's happened seem to be two different things. But let
me assure you about one thing. Though. Let me assure you of one thing. The decision that we make is going to be based upon what you're putting in front of us now, not what happened 20 years ago. The decision that we make is going to be based on the information today. Fresh information. Okay? You still there?
Yeah.
Not basically, yes, but go ahead.
Okay. All right, very good. No, that's all. I just wanted to make sure you understood that our decision will be based upon the information today, here and now.
But the information here and now is coming off the plans that were presented to you since 1998.
No, there's a new plan. We have a new plan in front of us, and that was submitted to us, and that's what we're using right now.
But are you in harmony with that plan?
I need a little more information before I can be in harmony with anything.
Okay.
But we're going to be asking for a little more information. We're going to be asking for some test borings, and then I think at some point we're going to.
That part of it doesn't bother me. I just get confused when I hear about leaving particular areas when the plans that we have refer to those areas, and I can't understand what's going on.
Well, we'll try to expedite it, and we'll try to make it so that it's clear.
the plans have to be tied into, the corresponding letters going back to 98.
Well,
Basically.
we're honestly, believe me when I tell you, the historical plans are important, but not as important as what's in front of us today, the fresh material, the new plan, the new line. That's the stuff we have to go by. So we're gonna use the information that's being submitted to us now. We're gonna get some more information from test borings, and we're gonna talk to DEP. We're gonna do all the things we have to do, and then we'll be able to give a good decision.
Hey, Al, this is Sean.
Sean, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, can somebody explain what the proposal or protocol is for the borings? I know we've talked a lot about augering down. So is the borings you're proposing different than the augering that we had been speaking about earlier?
Let me go back to either Jack or Joe on that. The proposed 3 borings, Joe, the proposed 3 borings that you mentioned, I guess both myself and Sean and maybe some other people could use a little clarification.
So I think we want to answer a couple of questions at least. One is the suitability of material to receive water and act as an infiltrated media. 2 is whether that media may have things in it that might concern us by moving water through it. You're not going to use the word contaminant, but what things might be in there. And then lastly, getting down to what was the original ground, what was the nature of that material, and advancing those borings through that original ground material down at least 5 feet into groundwater to determine if the presence of this material and the ongoing infiltration that's occurred has affected the groundwater condition. By answering all those things, we can better understand the appropriateness of infiltrating through it, whether it's in a concentrated fashion in the infiltration gallery or whether it's more dispersed across the entire site, will help us better understand those answers in those directions. So that's what we're looking to do. The reality is, and I'm not going to pretend to do the soil exploration's job for them, but pulling a loosely compacted, or glass doesn't really compact, it just stacks tightly together, whether you could actually recover a sample and draw it to the surface and offer analysis for some sort of gradation remains to be seen. We don't know that. But moving through it, we should be able to get enough of it out to get a handle on what the material is, and better yet, to understand by the time it finally gets down to the bottom, what's its impact on the groundwater.
And then the intention would be then to be able to provide that information for the stormwater management review. Is that correct?
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
And being cautious, I'm hopeful that 3 borings are sufficient. But depending on the result, I think we reserve the not so much the right, we do have the right, but reserve the statement that we may require a couple more or a few more until we get a better answer to the appropriateness of one method versus another.
Gotcha.
That's what I'm looking to accomplish here.
And Joe, as far as the location of those borings, are you talking about on the top of the pile? I would assume you're talking about the top of the pile, or pretty darn close to the top of the pile in 2 or 3 or more locations. Is that right?
So I was very specific to my locations. 2, one at either end of the proposed infiltration gallery. So that's 2 that quote unquote are within the pile. And then the third boring, do you have the plan in front of you, Sean?
I do.
All right, so the third boring would be to the right of that, at the very pile, which is, you see, about 18-inch HDPE, 237 linear feet with a slope of 0.006. Just below that notation, there's a spot elevation of 98.7. If you put it boring right there, you are now getting a boring through the pile, i.e. on top of the pile, at the closest location of where the wetland flag is. That helps us answer the question of that groundwater concern. And it's also within our fully within our jurisdiction.
Yeah. And my only other comment is, David, up until now, have you had any communications with DEP about this?
Sean, you're breaking up. I didn't get it.
I'm sorry, I think it was my plans folding. So Amy, thus far, have you had any communications with DEP about this project?
No, not directly, no.
That seems like a pretty commonsensical thing to get on top of, just to, ask them what their thoughts or intentions were. So I think that's a great idea.
I think, Sean, that's mandatory now because the applicant has represented to us that they had conversation with DEP prior to submitting the NOI. So we now have to make contact as well and have that conversation. So, yeah, I think that's part of it. The contact with DEP, applicants' contact with DEP, the test borings, monitoring wells if they exist, collaboration with the airport's wetland guy, Randy Christensen. That's all stuff that has to happen like right away now before we come to the next meeting.
Okay, thanks.
Al, just a brief point.
Yes.
I've done borings before, and Joe, you chime in if I'm wrong on any of this, but basically a boring machine is a machine that takes like a 2-inch pipe and it drills it down into the soil, and it goes down, and it can go down as long as they keep putting 2-inch pipes on top of it. It just keeps going down. But why it's very valuable and expensive is because it's tedious to do that, and number two is they retrieve cores from that pipe that are associated with a specific depth of drill. So you'll actually get a core of material that is 20 feet down. You'll get another core that is 30 feet down, 50 feet down, and you'll be able to evaluate, by looking at that actual material from the sample, you'll be able to evaluate whether, the percolation ability, the characteristics. So one nice.
Oh, you're breaking up, Jack.
Sorry.
Jack, were you done?
I guess.
Hey, that was the point I was trying to raise, is that, so we're not dealing with an in situ natural soil, which has a matrix to it of fine particles and coarse particles and wetness and dampness and things that as you drive that split spoon down and you retrieve it and pull it up, the sample stays within that split spoon. But if you take it to an extreme, like you're driving it through a media of what is purported to be ground glass, it may not have a graded matrix. It may all be ground glass. So you've driven that split spoon through, you raised it up, but in the process of raising it up, there's a possibility, and I'm not going to do the job for the soil samplers. There's a possibility that sample that you just obtained fell out of the spoon all the time it was being carried back up through the shaft. So it may not stay within the spoon because of the very nature of what we're driving through.
Might not be 100% accurate.
If it's mixed with other things, if it's mixed with sand and other things that are more congealing or have the ability to bind together, then the likelihood of retrieving sample improves. So the hope is that it's got other things in it that we can pull a sample up. The bigger hope is that those other things aren't bad things, but we need to know.
We'll discover the nature of the material that's down there.
That's right.
Yeah,
okay.
and also, Jack, if we're lucky, we may be able to retrieve some water samples from down there after the rig is washed, and just get an idea for water quality as well.
There you go.
And I think those would be the things that I'd be looking for if I was establishing my list of what I wanted to see. So. All right, anybody else? I guess we're looking, I'll be looking for a motion then if...
So moved. Move to continue to what meeting, Amy?
Well, our next meeting is February 10th, 2 weeks from now.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? There being none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? And that's unanimous. We stand continued. Thank you to everybody for participating. I yield the chair to Mr. Napoli.
Wow. Next order of business. Where am I here? Oh, 242-1799, 243 Great Pond Road.
Okay. So the commission will recall this project consists of deck reconfiguration, construction of a koi pond, landscape scale retaining wall, patio, and landscaping. Parts of the property are encumbered by a conservation restriction. At the last hearing, the commission discussed whether the proposed walkway could be located within the conservation restriction and whether stockpiling and equipment operation would or could be conducted within the CR. Town council reviewed the CR and the plan and was of the opinion that the walkway would result in removal of loam and soil, and therefore not allowable under the CR. She stated that the commission would have to decide whether stockpiling and equipment operation would devalue the conservation values of the CR. So I shared that opinion with the project engineer, and they proceeded to make some plan changes. And the proposed walkway has been eliminated from the plan. Stockpiling area was moved to behind the house outside the CR limits. And notes on the plan were included to specify the size of material to be, the size of equipment to be used, and required utilization of either plywood or rubber mats or other suitable means to protect the ground surface from equipment machine tracks. So it protects the travel route. And that would be happening over existing turf grass. So it appears to be that the applicant has revised the plans and proposed means and methods to address the commission's and the town council's concerns relative to the CR. And I would recommend closing the hearing and issuing an order in 21 days.
Thank you, Amy. Jack, any questions?
Not really any questions, just a note that we should probably condition that there are no permanent alterations to the conservation restriction area. And it seems like the applicant is consistent with that, so I don't have other questions, but when we do the decision, we should probably include that.
Okay, thank you. Joe?
I want to make sure I understood what town council's recommendation was. Since there's a official and documented CR on record, seems to me that at least within the order of conditions, there needs to be a finding of fact or a statement as to some affirmative vote of the commission that determines whether the stockpiling and equipment does not diminish the CR value. And that should be in the record somewhere as opposed to just a discussion in the minutes. Is that correct, Amy?
Well, I think they've eliminated stockpile within the CR. So that's, I think, is a non-issue.
Okay, but the other activities of the other construction is all outside of the CR?
No, the construction access does go into the CR, but what they're proposing is protective measures on the ground so that equipment doesn't contact the ground directly and therefore reduces impact.
Okay, so my understanding is if the CR wasn't on record, this would be a project that we would permit with a reasonable number of order conditions. So is the access through the CR something we should get on the record, as by way of a vote, or it's just something that we can be silent on.
Oh, no, I think we could probably put in our findings that we, you know, we,
I made determination of the access as proposed, that though it crosses the CR, has no detrimental effect on the purpose of the CR, and therefore is approved.
right, because
Okay.
there's A, B, and C protective measures.
So that sounds like what we want to document in the finding of fact right up front on that,
Okay.
as opposed to an outright condition.
Yep.
We can always have a condition about how it's restored in the end. Okay, I'm all set. No other questions. It looks like a pretty
Thanks, Joe.
straightforward. Otherwise,
Great.
Thanks. Al?
I am all set, thank you.
Okay. Amy, the only question I have is, I said it before, the dotted line is supposed to be the construction access. To me, it seems like they could work it on the inside of the 100, barely touching the, you know, why they're taking the route so wide, I don't understand. I think they could, you know, they're going to work their way out anyways. So why can't they just, right as soon as they get past the building, work their way in?
I don't know, maybe the project engineer could answer that?
Yeah, so for the record, Bill Hall with Civil Design Consultants. So just looking at the construction access here, it's just a general area we're showing on the plan, and the intent, we added another layer of erosion control on the plan as well to sort of guide that construction access, and the intent is to obviously stay between the erosion control there and the house, but as construction progresses, they'll just need to get back there to get around the eventual deck and the koi pond that's back there. And it just seemed like that was a natural way for it to go. Not sure if that answers your question, but I think what you were referencing is just trying to stay out of the 100 as much as possible. And I believe that we're doing that with what we're proposing, given the activities that are going to be happening on the site.
Okay, it just seems that the construction access seems to be a little aggressive, that we're being so sensitive on the conservation restriction. I think you could tighten it up a little bit on the backside. That's the only question I have, but I do see, it's so busy in that area.
It is, yeah.
Existing gas. Oh, okay, that's planting beds. Okay, yeah, like I said, I mean, you could. To me, I don't know. I haven't been out there, so I really can't say. But it seems like they could be the bend that you make on the outside around them planting beds. I think is of the existing. So it seems like your construction access is going wide just because of the planting beds.
Yeah, that's partially it. And if we kept it tight to the planting beds, that would pick up a little bit. But a lot of that is outside of the conservation restriction in itself as well. That restriction it jogs in towards the end of those planting beds.
Right, so the construction access in front of the house is outside the CR.
Yes.
Okay, well, to me, when it goes out by the existing driveway, the red line goes right along that. That's not the part of the conservation restriction.
So in front of the dwelling, you're saying?
No, right where the driveway is, where your construction access start, the red line is right there also. That's not part of the conservation restriction?
No.
No.
Okay, what's that red line for?
That is buffer zone.
Okay. All right.
Oh, there's inner riparian and outer riparian zones. They're very close. Or inner riparian and the 100-foot buffer are very close.
Okay. All right. John?
No questions, Lou.
Tony?
No questions.
Okay. So with that being said, I look for a motion.
I move that we close 242-1799 and issue a decision within 21 days.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that's unanimous. Thank you. All
Thank
right,
you.
Next one.
Who
Next
sec-
one is,
Can I just ask who seconded that one?
I did, Joe Lynch.
Joe, okay, thank you. All right, thank you.
okay. Next one is 242-1800, 158 Forest Street.
All righty. So the commission will recall this is an in-ground pool project with associated patio and pool shed. At the last meeting, questions came up about just the commission wanted to make sure that the pool was compliant with the zoning setbacks. So in discussion with the building inspector, the plan was revised to achieve 10 feet from edge of pool to the foundation and 10 feet from the edge of side property line. So that caused the pool to kind of elongate a little bit alongside the house. And the pool shed was going to be in the front yard, but that didn't fly for zoning. So they moved the pool shed to the rear of the house in the back. So the commission received these materials late, but the applicant wanted to have time and present these plan changes to you and get feedback and float the idea of perhaps a site visit with the commission. The applicant's main tenants for requesting a waiver from the potential vernal pool 50-foot, the 75-foot no-build zone starts with the fact that the house was built in 1997, and the plan at that time respected the 25 no disturb zone and the 50-foot no-build zone. So the existing house is within the potential vernal pool 75-foot no-build zone because of, respecting that original 25 and 50. The potential vernal pool was not detected in 1997, and if it does exist, it is off-site and cannot be evaluated. Current conditions of the potential vernal pool 75-foot no-build zone is existing turf lawn, providing no habitat, and they are proposing mitigation in the vernal pool 50-foot, the potential vernal pool 50-foot no disturb zone in the form of habitat enhancement of what is currently scrubby raspberry prickle bushes and some invasive species. Let's see. So that's it in a nutshell for what we have before us right now. If you have questions for me, the applicant and his consultant are with us this evening.
Thank you, Amy. Just a quick question too. Amy, didn't you state that the pool shed is going to require a waiver also?
Yes, that would be in the 75-foot vernal pool no build zone.
So there's actually two waivers.
Yeah.
There's a waiver for the pool shed and there's a waiver for the deck in the back corner of the pool, correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Just so the commission knows that.
Okay. Yep.
Jack?
Yeah, I think this whole thing turns on whether it's a vernal pool or not, because if it's not a vernal pool, it looks like it complies with our setbacks, with the possible exception of the stone wall, the new stone wall, which I'll get to. But
no, that's existing. Sorry.
It is existing. Okay. So then that goes away. why can't we determine if it's a vernal pool?
It's on another person's property. I mean, we couldn't
Yeah,
I suppose.
because it's a clear waiver or not, and we're missing the most important piece of information on this whole thing.
Right.
So I guess it's more of a question than a comment, but that's really what this whole thing turns on, including the pool equipment enclosure, because that would still be compliant with our 2550.
Right.
So anyway, I guess my question is I know time-wise you can't do these things in the winter. You have to wait through the season. Is there a possibility to do it in the future and do it right, rather than have the biggest unknown in the whole project linger over our decision?
Right.
All set, Jack?
So that I'm all set. Yeah.
Okay. Joe?
So I'm kind of looking at it from a different perspective. What I'm hearing is that it's an old permit that allowed the house and disturbance areas to get closer than we haven't allowed in years, but nonetheless did at some time many years ago. It's there. They're getting the backyard is quote unquote manicured lawn. It's cared for, it's irrigated, it's fertilized and whatnot. I'm seeing, at least I heard mentioned that there was some restoration or some replication of buffer zone. Is that what I'm seeing in restoration area A and restoration area B?
Restoration area, yeah. Restoration area B is habitat restoration. The area A is an area of yard waste dumping that needs to go.
Okay. So the site itself had prior violation. This process is going to be cleaned up and documented moving forward. But around that area with the yard waste dumping, is that all manicured lawn? Are we getting resource area back by these two restoration areas?
Yes.
So if we're assuming then the vernal pool is a vernal pool, by getting this habitat enhancement, are we getting a value better than what we would get if we were to deny the project and allow the existing condition to persist? It's a convoluted question. I didn't mean to ask it that way. Violation's a violation. They got to clean that up. So that's going to happen in Restoration B. Restoration A is something we're getting in return, it seems, for what they're proposing to be the pool, further encroachment into the buffer zone to vernal pool, under the presumption that it is a vernal pool. So if this project were not to go forward, that restoration area A would continue to be what, manicured lawn?
No, it's more like a low value area with some invasives. Like, it's not really vernal pool habitat. There's no, woody debris or anything like that. And
all right, so we're not, that's I guess what I was driving at is, even if we can't determine it is a vernal pool and it's off-site, in presuming that it is, we're not really getting anything in return by doing the restoration area A. And I want to point out, it's right at the end of the driveway, which in winter operations is a place that sometimes is going to get disturbed just by snow removal.
A is the dumping area.
A is the dumping area.
A is the dumping area. I'm sorry. I'm awful sorry.
I know,
so B is the area that we're talking about. So it is between what is now backyard and what is presumed to be a vernal pool. So if we allow the pool and deck to go in, we're in essence getting an enhanced area that's going to separate a situation that currently exists from a vernal pool that may in fact be functioning as such. So the question is ultimately, are we accepting that as a trade-off if we were to consider a waiver for the pool and the deck? How far back to the original permit go?
1998.
1998.
Yep.
It was probably a little earlier than that. I think the house was probably built in 97. And we have an as-built of 98.
Yeah, the as-built certificate of compliance was 98. The permit was probably a year or two earlier.
Right. So without being more convoluted than I was, what's really being asked for us is to grant the waiver in exchange for restoration area B being built and protected forevermore. And that's it. It's either waive it and allow it or deny the project. That's really the choices we're being asked to consider. And that says nothing about the pool equipment shed in the back.
That's
Okay,
right.
I have no further questions. I understand what we have to wrestle with.
Yep.
All right, thanks, Joe. Al?
So here's my take. I'm gonna I go with Jack. This thing turns on the vernal pool. I don't understand why we can't certify or decertify that vernal pool. The vernal pool activity time is going to be within the next 60 days. It's usually in March, late March, early April.
Yep.
That's when we certify vernal pools. Why? I understand it's on the neighbor's property, but why can't this pool be certified?
We don't have landowner authorization. It's
Has anybody asked the landowner for permission to go in and observe this pool when it's critter time?
we can certainly ask. Now, I've gone through this process as a consulting company. If we do ask the landowner, we have to provide them with a full dialogue of what potential ramifications are. And to date, I've had no homeowner on any circumstances say, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Because what happens is I'll go to the neighbor and say, we've been asked by the Conservation Commission whether or not we can get property owner authorization to perform vernal pool surveys of this vernal pool. And
Unless you're telling me that it would make the neighbor's house out of compliance, I see no reason why they wouldn't let you do it, because
that's just it. The order of conditions was issued for both 158, my applicant Nick Triano's house, and the abutting property, and that was in regards to again their order of conditions and permit has a 25-foot no disturb zone and a 50-foot no build zone. And
yeah.
If we say if we survey this, then you're going to be imposed with a 50-foot no disturb and a 75-foot no build that will be on your property. And I can't imagine
David,
I
get it. I get it, but unless they have a tiny backyard or unless their house is right up against it, that shouldn't impact anything. The 2550 applies to everybody. It applied when this house was built. The bylaw and the 2550 were in place in 97 and 98. Believe it or not, I was on the commission back then.
Sure.
So that's not, the fact that it complies, nobody's doing anybody any favors. That was the rule at the time. We've had filings where abutting properties have allowed certification or decertification. Like I said, the caveat would be unless it would materially harm the owner. Most people, what's the harm in asking? I mean, because you're asking us for a waiver, which I'm keeping score. I'm not bullish on your waiver, so I'm trying to help out here, and I'd rather see you find out if it is a vernal pool or not. It's not that far away. The season's coming up.
Yeah, mid March to late April. You're right. There's a six week window of opportunity to vet for egg masses and things of that nature.
And it's the end of January, so we're really not that far away.
No, but to play devil's advocate is that if we do take the conservative approach, without actually saying yes, it's a vernal pool, it's affirmed that it is, that we conservatively accept that it is. That in our waiver request, and I think that the three subjects that we brought about in our waiver request was, one, that the house in the existing condition was built in regards to a 25-foot no disturb and 50-foot no build. The existing stone wall coincides with the 25-foot no disturb zone. It looks like that was actually done specifically to retain the 25-foot no disturb. And everything between the 25 and 50 is manicured lawn and some appurtenances, like the porch and a deck and stairs associated with the back of the house. And then the house is actually built in the 50 to 75-foot setback. So in regards to the existing addition, what we're proposing to do is we're qualifying that construction of the pool will have no adverse impact if we consider that it's a vernal pool. That there's no removal of existing vegetation or anything that would serve as upland overwintering habitat for these species, that it's manicured turf lawn that would convert to the pool. And in doing so, that's where we offer the compensatory mitigation through native plantings in what we could, take a degraded area. The area where we're proposing the, compensatory mitigation with a native planting plan, it looks like it was previously altered at some point. It was certainly cleared of vegetation, and the vegetation growing in there now is primarily blackberry brambles, as we said, and interspersed with some invasive species. And vernal pool obligate amphibians require forested upland habitat. They burrow overwinter in soft duff and detritus and in root structure, in chipmunk burrows and holes, and find their way down. And in the existing condition, this area doesn't provide suitable habitat. So by proposal, we would clear the blackberry brambles out of there and provide, we have a planting schedule for trees and shrubs that we would plant in that area that, given some time, we could even cover it with some native leaf litter. We could put fallen logs out there to rot, which also supports these critters. And with, a few years through succession, it would be better habitat than it is in the existing condition. So I guess the devil's advocate part is it necessary to do vernal pool surveys seasonally to verify it if we conservatively accept that it might be and treat it as such?
Only because you need the waiver, and the waivers are usually accompanied by an alternatives analysis that has to really be specific.
Right.
So
we included now I don't know that verification of the vernal pool is pertinent to an alternatives analysis. The alternatives analysis that we provided is that there's no alternative area on the property to further vacate where we have a pool. That side of his home is the only area for which he can put a pool on the lot. The front of the house is encumbered by the leach field to the septic system. His driveway is on the opposite side of the house, and any proposal to put a pool in the back of the house puts us much deeper and further into this resource area. So we did look at the potential for a custom pool. We talked to the pool contractor about a kidney-shaped pool that would perhaps help us minimize some of that area. It also was vetted to get our 10-foot setback from the foundation in concert with the building inspector. But it's not viable. The custom pool design, the contractor said that to have a custom pool versus a pre-formed pool is like triple the cost. It's just absolutely cost exorbitant and economically infeasible, versus a pre-formed rectangular pool. That's easier for them to construct.
I would rather if you tried to, I understand what you said. Nothing was lost on me, but I would just prefer if you made an attempt to analyze the pool. Thank you.
Thank you, Al.
I'll say, Mr.
Thank you. I'm going to play the devil's advocate because you mentioned that the excavation of this pool. I think I'm trying to protect the applicant. I'm not trying to prevent him from having a pool, but I'm familiar with North Andover's land, and that area is either wet or ledge. And I think when they go dig that hole for the pool, using the deep end in the 100 or the vernal pool, I think they're going to have problems where they have a ledge cap exposed just beyond where they're working. I know it's not a wetlands thing, but I'm just trying to, because you talk about fees with a custom pool being triple. I think once they get into this digging of the pool hole, it's going to be exorbitant too, because if it's not ledge, there's going to be rather large rock, guaranteed. Because I'm looking, I went out there, and I'm looking at the wall that does the property line, and it's not fieldstone, it's broken up ledge. So that had to come from somewhere. So I have a funny feeling that it came when they dug the cellar hole. I think if they're going to get in, when it's so close to the property line and the house foundation, I think they should be taking a second look at where they want to put this pool. And the waiver, I am not in favor of a waiver unless the Vernal Pool is recognized. But I would talk to your applicant and have him think about the soil alongside his house, because it's either ledge or large rock. There's no doubt in my mind.
Sure. Yep. No, he's on. He's in attendance right now, so he's heard all of that. Yeah. No, but again, we think that's a civil engineering logistics issue more than it is environmental, right? The vernal pool notwithstanding, but yeah, the soil types that are out there and what he may have to deal with.
It's something I have discussed with our pool contractor, and they haven't indicated that that there would be a problem. And I know these people very well, and I know that they would tell me if there were going to be an issue with digging into the conditions. And I appreciate the concern, for the possible logistical conditions. But there's been no indication that he's going to present anything worse than they have seen in other jobs that they've done.
Well, that's fine, and that, I'm glad he's telling you that. But is he? My thing is if the guy is familiar with the area, if he's done any pools, it doesn't matter. It's not a conservation issue, but I'm concerned about the vernal pool. I just added that in because when it started out, we were like 4 feet in the foundation or 3 feet in the foundation, and I was even I spoke to the building inspector about it. I'm trying to protect the applicant whenever anybody files anything. I'm naturally concerned about conservation, but I'm also concerned to the applicant that they don't get themselves in a can of worms based on somebody that they're hiring to do a job, because the guy's looking for the mighty dollar and is not concerned about what happens. I mean, I just don't want you to get in to start digging this hole, and it could violate your foundation. It could go into the property line. It can go into the buffer. There's a lot of things that could happen. So I just want you to make sure that you're aware of it. But the vernal pool is the main thing, and to grant the waiver without designated as a vernal pool is an issue with me also. Sean?
Thanks, Lou. So I do feel bad for the applicant that they're in this situation, but this is not uncharted territory for us, where we've had a possible or likely vernal pool on an adjacent property and somebody trying to do something within 75 feet of it. And I think we've consistently held that you can't. It's not consideration. A waiver is it doesn't pass the test for the waiver. I mean, I understand you can't put the pool anywhere else, but let's say you wanted to put in a gym, right? I mean, so now you can put now the alternative analysis is to where can we put a huge gym? I mean, so it's just a slippery slope in that regard. So firmly, I think you need to identify whether or not it is a vernal pool. If it is a vernal pool, then you'll have to do an alternatives analysis, which I think is going to be tough to satisfy. And if it isn't a vernal pool, then I think I would be okay with the project. Thanks.
These conditions have never been documented or existed, of record. It's not of record in the in the plan that was filed in 1998. It's not on the NHEPS map. So I understand the board's concern here, but it's introducing a restriction on the property that heretofore did not exist. It's never been documented.
Yeah, this isn't the first time we've dealt with this. We do have vernal pools that show up years later after the wetlands were last designated.
Right.
And it's been identified. It's got the characteristics of understand of a vernal pool. So that is the assumption that we have at this point. If you want to rebut that assumption, then prove it isn't a vernal pool.
But the pool, the purported pool is not on my property.
Understood. And we've dealt with this before as well. You're not the first property owner who had a possible or likely vernal pool off of their property.
Right.
And I hope the homeowner understands, as I said from the beginning, I sympathize with your situation, but I feel that we have a precedent and we need to be consistent with how we deal with these issues.
Right.
And that we can't modify it and bend it for every property that comes in front of us.
We understand that. I know that as well as anyone. I serve on a conservation commission, and that's true. Commissions, they want to maintain a consistent precedent with every homeowner such that they're treated fairly and the same. However, I will retort that you're not comparing apples to apples in all circumstances. Not everyone has an existing altered area that will not, I don't know the specifics of your previous filings, whether or not they had a house that was constructed in accordance with the 25 and 50-foot setback, whether or not they were clearing native vegetation, and whether or not they had to demonstrate that there was no adverse impact. In our case, I'm quite confident that there is no adverse impact, and the ability to mitigate, the ability to look at this and vet this. And as was privy to discussion earlier, can you guys say with confidence that if you approve the project, that there will be a net benefit to habitat protection versus denial of the project, in which case things will remain the way that they are now? And I'm confidently can say that through permitting this project and granting the waiver, that with compensatory mitigation, there will be net benefit.
I'm sorry you don't agree with my position. That's all I can tell you.
All set, John?
Yeah.
Tony?
All right, thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Cowell.
Yes.
Just a couple of questions. So, correct me if I'm wrong, a vernal pool under the Wetlands Protection Act is only a vernal pool if certified, correct? A potential vernal pool does not offer any further protections.
No. Okay. Let's have a quick dialogue on vernal pools, right? So, vernal pools, by convention, vernal pools occur in isolated bodies that they're typically not found in BVWs. They're just typically isolated vegetated wetlands where you find these things. That's not to say that they can't be internal to BVWs. That's sometimes the case. The purpose of them being isolated and seasonally flooded is that if it's a perennial body of water that's flooded all the time, there may be a fish predation in there. If you can demonstrate that there are actually fish in it, then that really negates the potential for vernal pool, because fish are predaceous on vernal pool amphibian egg masses. The other concern I have with this water feature is that it's not isolated. There is a current, there's a stream that enters from, I don't know what the roadway is just down the street, but there's a culvert that drains into the wetland, and that body of standing water drains via an intermittent channel that transects Nick Triano's property. So what that does is vernal pool obligate amphibians in invertebrates. We're talking about ambistobid salamanders and fairy shrimp. They require very low dissolved oxygen content. That's why the isolation of being stagnant water is important. If you have a stream through it, as this feature does, that just by having a current in it increases the content of dissolved oxygen such that it may be uninhabitable. So unless you, again, demonstrate by performing seasonal investigations to look for fairy shrimp or evidence of breeding obligate amphibians, which includes wood frogs, salamanders are the common ones. There are some rare species on rare occasion, blue spotted salamanders, Jefferson salamander, and marbled salamander. But what you would do, and I've done several vernal pool investigations, as you guys are requesting of us. And you go out there during the breeding season, and you can set tadpole traps. You actually you can either lab capture adult individuals, you can find wood frog. The only thing observable from Nick's property would be observations of wood frog.
Migration or habitat. So essentially what we're coming down to is whether or not this is an ephemeral pool under the local ordinance, not
Right.
Any protection under the act itself.
Right.
That's it. It's a different it's a different mechanism to have it certified through Natural Heritage.
Yep.
Natural Heritage has a program by which they certify these things if you document field evidence of breeding amphibians and invertebrates. And it doesn't offer a ton of additional protection aside from the fact that I believe designated vernal pools become ORWs, outstanding resource waters, and it prohibits things like directing point source stormwater discharges or things like that.
Yeah. So, and just looking through our bylaw, that seems to be what we're trying to protect as well.
Right. So
and,
that's
and this is
the
all,
same.
Yep. This is all manicured lawn. Would the applicant entertain a condition against using nitrogen-containing fertilizers in perpetuity or something like that, if this was to go through to add net benefit to that potential habitat area?
Nick, are you aware in your current condition of how you're caring for your lawn, and whether or not you use either herbicides or pesticides or fungicides?
I mean, there are fertilizers. There is fertilizer that's used on the lawn itself, but to the question about limitation on the use of fertilizer in perpetuity, are you speaking about the front yard in the 100-foot buffer zone?
Only those fertilizers that would contain nitrogen or anything that would be detrimental to the habitat area that could cause eutrophication or anything like that. I'm not saying that you can't use fertilizers, but use care in selecting the fertilizers and have a condition that kind of makes you aware of that, educates you, and for the future. That, I mean, I would think that I'm not a wetland scientist, I'm more of an engineer, but I would think that would be a long-term benefit to the habitat. Is that correct, Mr. Powell?
No, I wouldn't disagree. Yep. I mean, that's again, it gets the water quality and what infiltrates and gets into the wetland system itself. Right. And I think that given the square footage of his lawn, that it's negligible. Not to say that we can't entertain it. I mean, he may still fertilize the front lawn, which is outside of the 100-foot buffer zone, but anything within a 100-foot buffer into the back. The concerns are nitrification, and what happens is if you get nitrogen and phosphorus and some of these things that are found in fertilizer in large quantities, it can cause eutrophication of water bodies, where the nutrients enter a water system that really enhances biological bacteria to the point that it becomes eutrophic, which can kill fish, and it basically takes all the dissolved oxygen out of the system and can wreak havoc on the system. That's where algae blooms and things like that.
Yeah, and some dissolved oxygen would be necessary for those potential vernal pool species that would be there. Now, I understand that they need. So my next question would be the proposed deck. The type of construction would, potentially something that's permeable, not necessarily pervious, but something that may not be solid concrete for the deck. Is that something that's? No,
I think, Nick, do you know if this is proposed on sonotubes versus having concrete foundation beneath the deck and I believe the deck is in-kind replacement. Oh, you mean
the decking
around the pool itself?
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah, no, the decking itself is not going to be poured concrete if that's what the question is. It's going to be.
There's stone pavers, but I think the question is whether or not you would entertain the cost of what are called pervious pavers, which.
Well, not necessarily pervious, permeable. There are some that have a little bit of a wider gap between the pavers themselves. Yes, so it doesn't, it does enhance a little bit of infiltration into the water, and again, I think that's that's something that would help kind of make us understand that, this is, you're using a lawn area, but you're not trying to take full advantage. You're trying to work with us into some extent where you're taking some consideration as a net benefit again to the habitat area. My other question would be on the fence, maybe providing a little bit of a gap, because I know migration of species is a concern.
Yep.
And then, maybe if you could just kind of let us know filter type and disinfectant type of the pool, if you know that now.
It's
and I could
system.
And I can respect that you want to get this done now, because I do know that to try and schedule a pool install in this market with the COVID, and everyone's trying to prep their yards for being able to enjoy the summer. If we're not able to travel again, that you're kind of behind the eight ball. So you did come in proactively, and you did ask us to come out to the site. So I think that we're probably not going to approve anything tonight, but going out to the site might be worthwhile if the rest of the board would entertain that.
I would, yeah, that's one of my requests would be prior to the next hearing, if you guys would entertain a site walk. I think that versus looking at pictures and getting visual on the ground context of what it is we're looking at would be beneficial to everyone in review of this. Would you guys entertain a site walk with us?
Well,
Sure.
First of all, before we get to a site walk, we have the issue of the waiver. Going out to a site walk if we don't grant the waiver, is kind of moot. So I think we have to decide if the commission wants to grant the waiver. I think that would be the waivers based on the vernal pool. So we're in a catch-22 here. So I
disagree. I don't think there's any reason that we can't hold a site walk. You're not closing the hearing. You don't need to close the matter on the waiver request. That's still pending and deliberating. But it would help give you guys visual aid of being on the site prior to entertaining that waiver. We're not asking you to close in that waiver or close the hearing in our deliberations. We're just inviting you out to look at it. Yeah. I don't think procedurally there's any reason that we should put off a site walk until a waiver is resolved.
Okay, well, I'll refer back to the commission. Would the commission be willing to do a site walk? I know one commissioner is on crutches, so he's not going.
Yeah.
And I'm not a good walker, so I'm not going.
Google Earth is a great alternative that we can do a virtual site walk from our desktop computers these days, and it's pretty straight.
No, I'd prefer to have people on the ground. There's only so much you can ascertain by looking at things on Google Earth.
Well, and I think at some point, it really boils right down to.
We do have site photo. Amy, can
you comment, and my follow-up comment to that is, you're proposing to simply assume it's a vernal pool in exchange for that consideration,
right?
To request a waiver, and that in exchange for that waiver, you're proposing to do some restoration in an area called Area B.
That's
what we're asking. So Jack's point of it being pivotal or crucial to that question is, if you can't or won't open up a dialogue formally or informally with the neighbor, not so much to certify the vernal pool, but at least better understand the likelihood of whether you folks are going to have an issue. And by the way, at your applicant's expense, the neighbor gets some forensic, gets some exploratory information that he can keep in his back pocket or in his mind for anything he might consider in the future, but not officially on the record. It would give you the better opportunity to understand whether this is a vernal pool or not. If it's not a vernal pool and your neighbor has nothing to lose, they might be more willing to not encumber their property with a decision to the contrary. If there is a vernal pool, it gives you the better opportunity to understand we're probably not going to approve a waiver because I don't buy the alternatives analysis. So it is crucial to understand this vernal pool question regardless of a site walk. Until that's determined, a site walk doesn't do me any good.
Right. What is it about the waiver request?
Now, if it came down to your initial assertion that we're going to assume it's a vernal pool,
yeah,
we're going to restore Area B as proposed,
yes.
in exchange, we're asking for a waiver, my vote would be no. And we owe it to you folks to understand that, to understand the importance of seeking out a better understanding of what the heck is this area offsite, and seek out your neighbors' your voluntary, informal understanding of what might exist on his property, and wink and a nod.
Right.
He doesn't necessarily need to share anything with it, but if you guys simply know we're going to vote no, if it is a vernal pool, then you withdraw without spending any more time or any more money.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. That is important to know. I mean, obviously, Nick doesn't want to put money into a vernal pool investigation that would only result in killing. If you guys aren't going to entertain a waiver, if it were a vernal pool, then there's really no point in him putting time, money, and effort into doing so.
And that's why I wanted to just cut to the chase on this, because if the presumption is it's a vernal pool, and if the inclination of this commission is we're not going to grant the waiver, you need to know that.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, as much as I think I like the project, I'm not going to grant a waiver. And that's my position on that. And if the chairman wishes to pull the commission of what they might feel, I guess that's fair feedback to folks to make a determination how to proceed.
Well, I don't have, I already have a feeling. I already know what that is. So what I would suggest is you guys continue, and then you can make a decision on what you want to do with this vernal pool or not vernal pool, and then we can act accordingly.
This is leaving us in a very nebulous close of this hearing, right?
Sure.
I've asked you guys if you guys want to have a site walk, and I haven't. Normally that would be well received. I can't understand under any circumstances why you would deny a site walk and actually look at this on the ground. And second of all, if you say I would vote to deny a waiver for this, right? That's one individual that, yeah, I would pull the rest of the members. But if you say I will deny a waiver on this, I think we're looking for some reason why. Why would it be denied?
Well, based on your own presentation, that if you're presuming it's a vernal pool, sure, and as such you're asking us to grant the waiver, there is the alternatives analysis presented under the assumption that it's a vernal pool in support of a waiver is something I don't buy into. And your only remedy here is cooperate with your neighbor to make a informal determination that this is not a vernal pool, and then bring it back to us and say, look, it's not a vernal pool.
How do you make an informal determination that it's not a vernal pool?
But so here's my issue, though. We keep calling it a vernal pool. Under the DEP regulation, it is not a vernal pool. It was never certified. It is an ephemeral pool under the local ordinance at best.
Exactly. You are correct, and by our bylaw, it's regulated in the same fashion. So
correct,
but is that determination?
Vernal pool.
What does your bylaw have any performance standards for clearly defining what an ephemeral pool is? Is there a classification for how to determine or not determine a vernal pool?
Yeah.
Is that articulated?
Yes, there is.
Okay. Let's take a look at that and see. Do you not hand me what those?
Guys, hold on. Look, we can talk about this till next Wednesday. So what you want to do, you want to get the information from Amy about a vernal pool, and then you guys can make the decision. You're the applicant. You can either go forward with what you have, or you can designate the vernal pool. But we're going round and round, and we're talking about the same stuff. So I would urge you to continue, get the information you need, and then you can go accordingly. The site, like I said, and I said the same thing. A site walk is not going to do any good if this commission is not willing to grant you a waiver. So we're not we're going round and round for the same reason. So I would urge you to continue and get the information from Amy about what we consider vernal pool, or you can not do that and go forward with the information you have, and we'll vote accordingly.
I have to ask, does the committee consider that the proposed restoration area B is insufficient if this area was determined to be a vernal pool? Would you consider that to not be sufficient? Because that's really the question. If it's a vernal pool, is the proposal for restoring area B sufficient to grant a waiver?
That's not the basis of a waiver, sir.
But
that's not the basis. That's not the basis of a waiver. The basis of a waiver is that is described in your alternatives analysis, and the alternatives analysis is just that it's an inconvenience. It doesn't meet the standard, and that's what we're trying. We're all asking you to just please take a better look at the pool, because I can tell you if you force it to a vote tonight, it's going to be denied. So it's up to you. If you want to force it to a vote, I'll move it. I'll move it to a vote, and this will be over in 60 seconds.
No, I am not.
So it's up to you.
Vote. I'm not asking to force a vote. I'm just trying to get some clarity as to, as to what the board is really, requiring here. The board is requiring
what we're asking you to do. We're asking you to do is to either certify or decertify the pool, because we're telling you that we don't, in our collective opinion, we don't believe that it qualifies for a waiver. We don't have to give you a story as to why. We're not required to give you a why. I'm sorry if I'm being direct, but that's just the way I am.
I don't understand how.
And from my perspective, this is Joe Lynch speaking. From my perspective, I've already been deliberating that in my own mind from the very first opening of my comments. I wanted to make sure I understood clearly. You're looking for a waiver, and in exchange for that is the restoration of area. That's it in a nutshell. Under the presumption is the vernal pool.
Restoration, I am agreeing to do the restoration irrespective of anything else.
In my consideration through all of this, having not been on the site, and before we would close, I would entertain a site walk to fully understand the significance of what's being offered. Looking at this restoration area and what is being waived, I would still be inclined to say it is not a proposal capable of getting a waiver from me. So I think your upshot here is to cooperate with a neighbor and make a determination that this isn't a resource at all, and that this is and then if that's in case what you agreed to informally, you and the neighbor and your consultant, then with the comfort of knowing all of that, and it's not going to encumber the neighbor's land, the neighbor could assent to an actual determination that it is not an ephemeral pool, and make that as part of your formal submission to us, and this whole question goes away. And that was Jack's very first opening comment, I believe, was it's pivotal of knowing what that is. But moreover, it's pivotal to know that it's not an ephemeral pool, because if it is, I'm not inclined to grant the waiver, even with restoration area B.
Okay, so
And the neighbor's going to be under scrutiny anyway, regardless.
But they may be more willing to do it if they go about it as just a neighborly investigation, just to help each other out, in the hopes that it's not anything. And if it is something, the applicant, knowing what he might walk away from tonight, knowing that he's not likely to get a waiver, might simply be well equipped to make a decision at the next meeting to withdraw without spending any more time or money.
So are you telling me that if this body of water, which has been there for years, and at the time that the order of condition was imposed, if it is determined that this is a vernal pool, you're not going to grant a waiver?
That's my inclination right now. That's for sure. I'm sticking my neck way out by saying this, but I think you deserve guidance to know what your alternatives are in understanding the significance of, working with that neighbor to understand what is there. I'm just trying to be as forthright as possible to understand that's how important this question is. If it came down to a presumption, it is in fact an ephemeral pool, and you're asking us to waive the setback for this deck and pool construction, and in exchange to give us restoration area B, I'd be not inclined to approve it. I have enough information to say that's something we have never done in the past 20 years. And I know that from the time that this house was originally built and until we modified the bylaw, which was shortly after this house was built, did we even include ephemeral pools into our bylaw? So it may not have existed even within the bylaw back in the era when this was first approved.
Right, so we both know where we stand. Do you want to continue, or do you want us to vote?
I want to continue, but
Okay.
I know where two members stand.
Pardon me?
I know where two members stand.
Well,
You say we.
Well, and again, I'm going to ask the board. I'm just looking at the Google aerial. It seems like it's 40 feet of lawn, and then it seems like it's. And again, without being there, I can't tell, but it seems like some sort of brush, low-lying shrubs. For the next.
Do you have the site photographs? I said site
Yeah,
photographs. I think it could
and
spare
it's hard to
by
get the full perspective. It's hard to get the full perspective from the site photographs, but I'm seeing almost 90 feet back behind the house before you see any mature vegetation, like actual trees. So again, to me, a picture's worth 1,000 words, but actually being there is worth that tenfold.
I love that site walk.
all right, well then, why don't we do this then? We'll continue it to the next meeting, and then if you can get commissioners to go out there to go look at it, that's fine.
For you, Mr. Chair, if we can go out separately, if he's
That's fine.
willing to make it available for us to go out there on our own time between the next few meetings or the next meeting, I'd like to be able to just swing by, and if that's okay with the property owner.
I'm here 24/7. You can come by anytime you like. If you give me enough advance notice, I'm happy to invite you on.
All right, thank you. I'll coordinate through Amy as well, and maybe some pictures from a better perspective or something might help.
Okay, that's good, Tony.
I don't know if Amy's able to bring them up. I sent her some earlier.
I forwarded them, so they have.
No, we have them. It's just kind of, again, I think I know what's going on, and I think I can tell from the aerial photographs, but I think just having a walk out there will help immensely.
I agree. That's why I would love to have a coordinated site walk. And we sent you site photographs for presentation purposes tonight, and you guys are denying us the ability to present those?
Well, it was kind of a preliminary hearing. I wouldn't say we're denying you the ability, but I think there are some of us that are looking to advance this. I think actually all of us are looking to advance this one way or another. And, I think between the site walk and maybe some additions to the plan, the limit of the existing disturb added on the plan, I'm sure you got shots at the limit of lawn, might help clarify things as well.
All right, so I stand now. Continue for the next 2 weeks, and the commissioners will talk to Amy, and we'll schedule a site walk if whoever wants to go. Does that work for you?
Yep, thank you.
All right.
It does.
So we need a motion to continue.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? And that's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thanks.
All right, next one, 242-1802, 1010 Johnson Street.
Okay, we're continuing that to the February 10th meeting.
Motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
You have a You have a motion and a second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, and that's unanimous. The next two should go quickly. It's discussion via North Andover Planning Department.
No, we need Bark Street culvert bond.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm trying to get it. I'm trying to get ahead of myself. 242.
Good try, Lou. It was a good try.
242-1784. Request for partial bond release for Barker Street culvert. Before we have discussion, I just want to let you know that I personally made a site review of it. They did an excellent job. So, Amy can discuss it with it, but I think it's 50% bond is good, okay with me.
Yeah, so the culvert, fire hydrant, and water main have been completed. The remaining work relates to wetland replication and final seeding and stabilization of those areas. Aside from a couple of areas of exposed soil that still needs to receive some erosion control blanketing or straw, the work area is stable and things look good. And the order has been complied with throughout the project. And like Lou said, he had popped out there just after the culvert was installed. So I have no objection to reducing the bond by 50%, which would leave $10,000 left over for the remaining work.
Thank you, Amy. Jack?
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you guys. If you're good, I'm good.
Thank you, Jack.
No question.
Joe?
Yeah, no questions. I agree too. Good work.
Thanks. Al?
Agree.
Sean?
Agreed.
Tony?
I'm in agreement.
Motion?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, and that's unanimous. Okay, now we'll get to discussion with the planning department about a Osgood Pond boardwalk. I don't know what they expect from us, but except maybe Al could write a check.
I just want to say that if you're asking if we're in favor of it, I'm in favor. Let's move on.
Okay.
Well, Dan Beckley, staff planner, is with us this evening. So, the Osgood Pond Boardwalk came out of the Master Plan Implementation Committee, and part of the objectives of the downtown improvement is making connections. So, the concept of a boardwalk over Osgood Pond, they'd like to investigate, design and engineering costs, and they would like to have your input.
Yeah, if I can just add on to that.
That's
So these are both for Mass Trails grants, which require getting input from the Conservation Commission. So that's why I'm here. It doesn't need to be substantial. I just want to initiate a dialogue, get a sense of if there's concerns, what you think may be needed, and also, just inviting you to be involved in this future process.
Okay.
But if,
Okay, Dan. Jack, you have any questions? This is the first one is the bridge over the pond, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, yeah, question is that bridge going to go on that in the photo?
It's the red line.
Yeah, so it's going to go straight across the entire pond, through the middle of the pond?
Yeah, 700 feet.
Approximately. This is rough. That's why we're gonna. The grant application is for engineering and design, so we're going to work with, abutters and also get a better sense of the wetland before determining exactly where it crosses to and from. But we do want to avoid crossing directly along all the properties on Water Street.
Yep. Okay. Okay. It looks preliminary. A more optimal path would be could evolve from your analysis. Is what I'm hearing.
Yep.
Yep. Okay. And the rail trail project, I was vehemently in favor of this 20 years ago, and I remain that way. I noticed that you had proposed from the high school driveway to Stevens Pond, but the path also continued well beyond that. Can you explain? I mean, what's the idea of that?
So once we get beyond Stevens Pond, right after Stevens Pond, you hit 4 or 5 backyards where it cuts really close to the houses. We don't have time before the grant application is due to really get into engagement with the property owners there, or get their agreement. The general sense is that that section may have to cut along Pleasant Street and up Great Pond Road to continue.
Okay.
Right away.
It sounds like it's a phased. You're intending it to be a phased project.
Yes. So the grants come in at like 100,000. So engineering and design definitely would cover. 100,000 wouldn't cover engineering and design for the full extent to Blue Ridge Road.
Okay, I'm all set.
Okay.
So is that Jack?
Yeah, I am.
Okay. Joe?
I guess we're taking these sequentially. On both projects, I'm always in support of inviting the public out into the areas that we protect in the hopes that we get a better appreciation of the public's understanding of why it is we do what we do, and better yet, to really enjoy and benefit from those resources that we have protected. So that's just a generic statement, which nobody could possibly disagree with from a planning perspective, I hope. I think it's premature to get into whether this is a bridge or some sort of interpretive trail, but I think the concept of getting people out to what was an important mill district and now serves a separate function or a different function today is an important thing from a historical perspective as well as a conservation perspective, and I'd support it. As this project evolves, I think we're going to have more involvement in it, particularly in the permitting phase. I recognize the complexity of building not so much a boardwalk, but literally a pedestrian bridge across an open waterway has got some challenges, especially, when we might be concerned with what may be in the silt muck layer behind this mill dam that's accumulated over the centuries. Those are all things that need to be flushed out in the end, no pun intended. But the general concept on Osgood Pond is a decent one. Rail trails in a very similar fashion. It's come up several times since I've been a commissioner. We always support it for exactly the same reasons I just stated. We've always been met far down the road as things were being proposed in a more definitive fashion by abutter concerns, and those segments that we can connect that are on open and public properties or without abutter opposition are areas we should try to build them when we can and link them over time in creating a network. It's a healthy thing. So I support both projects in its general concept, and we'll try to work, with planning as far as furthering those projects along. That's all I have.
Thanks, Joe. Al?
I am all set, thank you.
Okay. I am too. It's just the bridge. The cost analysis are going to be staggering, but I'm in favor of both. Any improvement on trails on that walkway connecting the mills to Main Street on the revitalization project is fine with me. Sean?
I'm also in favor of both projects. I think the bridge is, an expensive, challenging project, but I'm certainly in favor and hope that it will get the backing that it needs. Considering the rail trail, that's something that I advocate for. I'm on the Master Plan Improvement Committee, and out of all the open space options that have been provided within the master plan, I think this is the most significant to our town. It can make the best improvement overall for the largest degree of the population. And I think this is a darn good start. And I think once people see it, it's going to gather steam and they're going to want to see a longer one. So I think this is great.
Thanks, Sean. Tony?
No, I think these are both great projects. I think, connecting the mills to downtown is a excellent idea. I mean, you just think of the amount of fuel that's wasted from driving between the two, having a viable walkway. Great idea. I would like to throw in, selfishly, I have a son who goes down to the upper pond and goes fishing all the time. So if you do put the bridge in, maybe some active recreation, little bump out where kids can go fishing is not a bad idea. And if I can offer any support when you do your grant application, I'd be more than happy to do it, because these are both great projects. I think that's what makes us a great community. So totally in favor.
Thank you, Tony. So there you go, Dan. So I got all kinds of papers in front of me. So is that enough feedback for you?
Yeah, no, that's fine. I just, I figured everyone would generally be in support, and I know there's going to be, permitting required. It's required that,
Yeah, it just seems that you're getting support from the commission, so let's move on, and good luck.
Thanks.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks. Okay, next one is an enforcement order, 177 Great Pond Road.
All righty. So this came to our attention actually through the homeowner reaching out to our department inquiring about mowing vegetation areas on his property near the utility lines. Our field inspector visited the site and discovered that there were unauthorized areas of clearing and ground disturbance resulting within our areas of jurisdiction. The property has multiple wetlands, dotting around it, and it is within the watershed. Let's see. The Conservation Department issued a cease and desist letter and required erosion controls, and that the homeowner engage a wetland consultant to get the wetlands delineated. On January 14th, the Conservation Department and the Planning Director, Jean Enright, held a site inspection with the homeowner to walk the site to look at these areas. And we reviewed the following with the homeowner at that time. Work was to cease in any area within the 100-foot buffer zone and the wetland and the watershed protection district. Wetland delineation was to be completed as soon as possible. The homeowner at that time indicated to us that they had engaged Norse Environmental, and as far as I know, they have not gotten out there yet. And erosion controls, we explained to them what type of erosion controls were to be installed and how to do it, and they have since done that. So in conversation, and the other thing that we found was a chicken or rooster pen with coops that were immediately installed. It's installed immediately adjacent to the wetland line next to the house. So that's something that we discussed. That's, obviously the commission's going to want to not allow to stay there. So that was the other thing. So in discussion with the chairman, my recommendation is that the commission issue an enforcement order that requires continued cease and desist from activity, and that the applicant file an ANRAD, which would be a very useful tool for both the commission and the homeowner to know where all the wetlands are. And then the commission may, I don't know how the commission wants to handle the chicken pen. Do we want to plan in front of us first, so then we would know the best place for it, or what? So that's it in a nutshell.
Thanks, Amy. Jack?
Yeah, I like the level of cooperation. It sounds like we're in a good position with this situation. The homeowner came to us, and apparently in the interest of doing the right thing. I have great appreciation for that. The erosion controls went up very quickly. It sounds like we got a good thing going here, and we should act cooperatively. And I mean, maybe even informally. Once we know where the wetland lines are, we could. I'm not sure we'd even need a plan to generate. I think let's continue the good momentum we have, and continue to work cooperatively to do the right thing on this property. So yeah, it sounds like the enforcement order is working. So let's keep it going.
Thank you, Jack. Joe?
Amy, was your question whether we would be inclined to allow the chicken pen and coop to stay where it is until we know more? And if that's the case, yeah, are we at all concerned about that location now, or is there a better location they could simply move it to on their own ahead of time? Do you know those answers?
I don't know where. I didn't really have time to look at alternative locations. So I don't know the answer to that question. The chicken pen has been there for several months, I believe. So, I mean, it's sort of like, how chickens are. They scratch and peck and
Yeah, it's
yeah. So, it's kind of like a dirt area.
the way I look at it is it's a living animal, and displacing them unnecessarily is maybe not a great thing to do. And at the same token, is they're probably not causing any greater harm than the flock of geese that is probably floating on the lake right behind them. And so I'd be inclined to just let your recommendation ride out, let it stay there until we know more, and give them direction to move it only once.
Yeah.
I'm all set. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Al?
Thank you. Two things. I'm in favor of leaving the chickens where they are until all the delineations have been completed. And secondly, at that point, I would be willing to participate and help out in the most suitable, if they need to be moved, in the most suitable location for the coop. Happy to help out. Very much in favor of backyard livestock.
Thanks.
Thanks. I'm in conjunction with the rest of the commission, leaving the chickens where they are for now. I suggested the ANRAD only because this has got to be the most oddly shaped lot that I've ever seen in my life.
Very, very weird. You
Yeah.
have the map, right?
Do you guys have the map?
Yeah, it is.
It's weird, but
with minimal
applicant,
frontage.
Yeah, the applicant has been very cooperative. So, and I think at some point they spoke to Amy about possibly putting a barn in that that bare area just behind the house. So that's why I suggested to file an ANRAD so we know where everything is, versus just doing fixing the enforcement as far as doing vegetation, which we don't even know where it's supposed to go. So that's why I suggested an ANRAD. Sean?
I'm good with it. I agree with you guys.
Okay. Tony?
I agree. If the applicant's being cooperative, a lot of times these are just from homeowners not fully understanding the regs. So hopefully they walk away with a good experience, feel like they're treated fairly, and then everyone in the neighborhood will kind of understand, and we've done our job. So yeah, no, I think we keep working with the applicant as long as they're working with us.
Very good, thank you. So the only other question is the length of time. Have you talked to the applicant as far as them filing for the ANRAD, Amy?
No, I haven't even talked to him about an ANRAD.
Okay.
That came up with our discussion between you and I, so.
Okay. What do you think is a date sensitive on the enforcement order, or should we just leave it open?
Well, that's what I kind of wanted to ask you guys. If the commission's in favor of requiring an ANRAD, well, I guess that's the question. And then
For you, Mr. Chair, I think it'd be nice to at least see it flagged, maybe not necessarily an ANRAD until we can see the flagging and have someone.
Well, the only reason I said that, Tony, about the NRAD, it's only the filing fee. It's the difference. The wetland scientists still got to go out and flag it. At least if they know where all the flags are and it's on some type of plan, they are thinking about putting a barn in the future. They'll have all their eggs in a row. So
I think that's the right
process.
I think that's the right course in the long run. I just think that the way the construction market is right now, if we give them a timeline, it might be hard for them to meet. So at least give them a long enough timeline that they can reach out to some wetland scientists. It sounds like they've talked to Norse, who can't get out there in time, and then talk to a surveyor. But let's not be too onerous if they're working with us, and work towards the NRAD, but not make it a condition that by next meeting they have to have it.
No. That's why I asked how long. Do we leave it open, or I'm game for anything.
Lou, I would suggest we leave it open and just work with them.
Going like a plan. All right, so motion?
I'll move it.
And
Second.
so what are you moving?
We're moving at the, we're gonna leave.
I'm moving that we leave it open and they work with you and start to get whatever you want done. And we leave the chickens where they are.
Yeah, and no
And
way.
approve the enforcement order?
Yes.
Yes, and amend it to reflect what we've said here tonight.
So not required ANRAD right this second.
No,
Well,
but that's what we're leaning for.
You let them know that we're requesting an ANRAD. We're not putting a gun to their head. We're not saying you have to have it done in 15 days or 30 days, but we want you to work towards it.
Okay.
And we want you to get the delineation done. That's the most important thing.
Okay.
So secure the services of a wetland scientist, get the delineation done, and then at some point, if we determine that the coop needs to be moved, we'll work with them on a suitable relocation program if it's necessary.
Okay.
And I think I'll, just like everybody on the commission has said, if they're working with you,
Yep.
let's just work with them.
Okay. That's great.
So the violation notice that was sent out, the cease and desist order, January 8th, you had given them until January 26th to complete the delineation. So I think we need to modify that. And, I see no reason why another month at least would be reasonable. I'd even go so far as to say, by March 1st, they complete that.
I mean, if they're going to require augering to get soil samples, you might even want to give them some in April when the frost is out of the ground. I've been told that winter delineations are rather difficult. So,
and since we're on record of what their performance was to be, and they've exceeded that by a day only because they couldn't secure a consultant, I think it's reasonable to modify the notice and give them a better date, and whenever that is, maybe April 15th, maybe it's May 1st, but I think we probably should give them something to aim for.
Yeah.
And that gives us the ability to kind of keep their feet warm, not to the fire, but keep them warm and keep them going in the right direction. But
so is it reasonable to ask for a delineation within the next 60 days? Is that reasonable?
No.
Yeah.
I
That's
don't.
not.
because
Amy saying no.
Okay, so I hear you, Amy. What are you thinking?
I think it should be a little bit longer, like, um, you know,
May 1st?
May 1st, yeah.
Yeah.
May,
How about a
say-
letter,
so-
letter of engagement within the next 60 days, just to say, hey,
Oh, okay, yes. That's a good,
you know, that way, okay, we've reached out, we have a wetland scientist where we've contracted them, and, you know, we understand that it takes a while and these may not be optimal conditions, but again, within 60 days, we still see that they've moved forward.
okay.
I like it. I like it.
That's-
Excellent.
Great. Yep. Yeah, letter engagement in 60 days and the delineation by May 1st.
Okay.
I-
great.
Okay,
I
we
think
have a
those are,
motion. You have a motion, now we need a second.
Second.
Jack,
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, and that's unanimous.
thank
And
you.
all we have left is decisions.
Decisions, yep.
Yeah, 242, 1801, 376 Salem Street.
So it looks like our bond by condition 38 is $5,000. So are we, is that because it's a single family home?
Yeah,
Yeah, okay. Nothing in there for the steep driveway and stone
Yeah.
line swales or anything?
Jack, I agree. I think this is not your typical site, given the steep grades and the fact they are trying to, you know, trying to manage all that construction runoff, not so much the permanent runoff, because I think that is achievable, but during constructions where the vulnerability occurs. You know, given what I saw from the plan of what they're proposing, it's a pretty good sized house. I think doubling that to 10,000 is appropriate.
okay.
Now, they obviously, if I'm not going to state it right in there, but at any point that they achieve great stability and they're in a good time of year and they've stabilized things, you know, they can come in and get that bond reduction at any time
Right.
when they've done all those things.
And the stone maintenance long-term operation is on condition 57, Jack.
Got it.
And I would attach the O&M plan to the order to get recorded.
Can we talk about condition 43?
Yeah. Okay.
So, are we talking about slopes here?
Yeah,
So a 12-inch mulch sock is not going to be sufficient.
yeah,
It's gonna require something that has more height to it. It's going to have to be staked and silt fencing with it, because if it starts to run, it's just going to go right over, under, around, and everything. So
Yeah.
I'm not saying it has to be hay bales, but it should be something as substantial as hay bales and silt fence. The mulch socks that you roll out, that they sell that you roll out, are just not sufficient for a site like this.
yeah.
It does say backed by entrenched silt fence.
I see
Yeah,
that. I do see that.
Yeah, no, but I know what you mean about the mulch sock. I mean,
I think if they made a mulch sock that was like 18 or 20 inches high, maybe you'd have me. The 12-inch just doesn't. You know what I mean? It's not going to make it. And
I think if you look at the standard, the specification for silt socks, it
Yeah.
says when within 5 feet of a slope in excess of 3 to 1, they want double road stake. So, and that's their standard specification. I think if we carried that over, that might be.
that might do it. Yep.
Yeah.
anything to back it up if we start getting a good hard flow.
Okay. Double row.
And make sure they dig that silt fence right in.
Tony, what's the spacing between the silk stalks on that double row?
They're butted right up against each other, so it's so they're right next to each other. And I'm 99% sure because I just got called on this. If you look at the silt socks actual specifications they have on their website, they say within 5 feet of a 3-to-1 slope there should be a double row stake together.
Okay. So you have the depth, but no additional height.
No additional height, but you know, those silt socks, they are pretty heavy, and when they're staked, I mean, you're talking about a lot. What you're more worried about is what's going under it. You know, to go over by 12 inches, you're looking at a pretty decent flow. And
we've had it though. We have.
Oh no,
had it,
I believe it. And you know,
we've
the
had
silt
it
fence
move over.
behind it will help.
There was
the other thing that I saw was on 44. I'd go to 75 feet if they're willing to keep a roll of erosion control blanket on site. I think that helps a lot more than on steep slopes, at least. If you can roll the blanket out that last 5 feet, it really does help to catch things and stabilize them.
How much?
That's a good point.
Blanket.
So I mean, a single roll will cover 500 square feet. It's 4 feet by 112. So even if they had 2 rolls, just, you know, when they start to see failure, if you can get that over the failure, when you start to get the rivulets through the soil, where you can actually see, and then get that staked in over it, just as a stopgap until they can get more materials on.
So 75 feet plus the blankets.
Yeah.
And
it sounds good.
okay.
Yeah, it does.
So 45. You know, the plan doesn't really call out a construction entrance.
So, I think there was a discussion. We brought that up during one of the first hearings, and the engineer said that they were going to actually access from because they're developing 2 lots in conjunction, and I thought the response was they were going to access over the and I don't have the plan up, but the lot to the left.
You're right.
And come in through the backyard. So
you're right.
I think that should be sufficient. Maybe if you want to just say submit a plan that shows that marked on the plan.
Okay.
Prior to construction, just so they honor that. But that was my recollection.
I would leave 45 as is though, because if there's if they're going to put a driveway down to Salem Street, why there's going to be vehicles up and down there.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And you're going to have to build that. You're going to have to build that driveway anyway. I don't know. I would leave it in. I remember that discussion, Tony, and thanks, because that's going to help. But I think they're going to use it. Because if it's easier to bring a truck up this way, they're going to do it. So I don't know. I would leave it. What do you guys think?
No, I think leaving it in makes sense.
I agree, Jack.
Yeah, any place there's an access point, it should be protected.
Right. And, I mean, I'm just trying to say that if Amy goes out there and they're accessing from the other lot, as long as they're not using the driveway for access, they can keep moving for clearing, grubbing, that sort of thing. But yeah, as soon as they want to use it, definitely get some stone down there.
Yeah.
And so dewatering, I'm pretty sure. Well, I shouldn't say. I don't know. We didn't really talk about it. I don't know if you guys have a feel as to whether they're going to need dewatering, for maybe the house.
Well, if it's as high and steep as they say, I mean, but I can't say that because I've seen water on the top of hills.
Yeah, we saw water on Claypit Hill and then some. So yeah, we have a standard condition on the dewatering.
Yeah.
And as a pre-construction note, we should probably ask them to, and we probably usually do ask them to show how and where they would do that. That way, in the case that it's needed, the condition's already in place to cover it.
Yep. Okay.
And looking at the existing grades, they're at, center of the garage 130, and they're cutting that down to 116. I don't know many places in Massachusetts where you can go down 14 feet and not in front of water. So.
All right. So we definitely need a plan.
Okay.
And actually, Tony, you raise a good point that probably we should have raised during the hearing itself is, so you do get down that deep. In essence, you're ending up intercepting a groundwater lens at some elevation, and then it's appropriate to have some sort of sub drainage along that area to be controlled, because otherwise it's just going to be leaching out at the bottom of that cut and running down the edge of that cut and then down the driveway. But we never asked about the need for sub drains.
But I think that the stone shoulders will essentially function as that. They'll pick up anything that's bleeding out. So, and this, the sub drainage would be great, but there's no real structured drainage in the road to tie into. So letting it go into the riprap shoulder and out, we'll probably accomplish the same thing.
And the dewatering plan, Joe, we did it like we did on what the hell is that street off of Chestnut Street. He just wanted that put on the plan, but not have it set up. I think we should have it on the plan and have it there, so that if we do need it, it's there. They don't have to start building it while the water's leaking out of everywhere. If it does.
I think it's a fair comment, Lou. It is. It's probably something you're not going to be able to get in at the beginning of construction until you gradually make your cut into that hill. You get near the bottom of that cut.
Yeah.
I think they've got to have the ability to have whatever devices they're proposing, whether it's a temporary sump with hay bales and stone, whatever it is they're going to put in there for control, they should have it as available as they're making that cut.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that shall be known as the Napoli condition, because Lou always makes that point. It's too late to start building it once the water starts coming out.
Yeah. It's like putting your finger on a dike. Okay. Any more questions? We're beating this one up pretty good. If nobody has any more questions, we can go for a motion.
I move that we approve the order of conditions for 242 1801 as drafted and amended.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, and that's unanimous. One more, 242-1804, 1874 Turnpike Street.
NRAD. I wanted to make sure you were good with the language about the natural heritage. Habitat.
I'm looking at it right now.
1870.
Be interested to see what they're gonna do with this.
Yeah.
Can't be any worse than its next door neighbor.
Oh, please.
Yeah.
I had hair before that one started.
I remember.
2 years ago, my father returned from Florida. We picked him up at the airport. We came up Route 1 to 114, and we got to that project. And my quaint little old man father says, "What the F is that?"
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a fun one. You know what, I went by there the other day, Amy, and this application that we have right here, they've got brush piled up in the back, like you can write home about.
Yeah, you should have seen the microburst that went through that particular property. A whole bunch of big pines got snapped.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
Yeah, I like the language that you put in regarding the Vernal Pool in the opening paragraph, and then the natural heritage citation.
Okay.
They're good.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
I have nothing to change. If that's
all set. Yep.
Pleasure, I'll move it.
Okay.
I'll second it. I will second it.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, and that's unanimous. One more thing is the signature authorization.
Yep.
I move that we authorize the Conservation Administrator to sign on behalf of the Commission for all actions we've taken tonight.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, and that's unanimous. And last but not least, motion to adjourn.
Yes, sir.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Aye. Aye. Aye.
I know. Opposed, and that's unanimous.